Live, there we go. The time is 7 o'clock. I'm going to call to order the special town meeting for November 13th, 2018. I'd like to ask the chairman of the Board of Selectmen to come forward to the pledge.
Good evening, everybody. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Thank you. As you can see, we have a healthy warrant tonight, a lot of things to discuss. As usual, some will have very little discussion and some might have a lot of discussion, but that's what town meeting is all about, so thank you all for coming. Madam Town Clerk, is the warrant legal?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, the warrant has been posted according to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the bylaws for the town of Upton.
Thank you very much. Okay, so just give me a minute, I'll put my other microphone on so that we can then get started. Thank you. Okay, is that on yet? Can you guys hear me or not? No. Has this been turned on in the back? Okay, well, until this is going, I'll go with this one, okay? Thank you. All righty. Article 1, does anybody have the motion for Article 1?
Article 1. I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash a sum of $500,000 to the stabilization fund.
Second.
Moved and seconded, FinCom recommendation.
Favorable action, Mr. Moderator.
Favorable action by the FinCom. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Van Bossen.
Try this. Rupert Van Bossen, 125.
You gotta stay right on it.
As I drive around town, I'm seeing an inordinate number of dead oak trees, large trees. And I'm wondering, do we have enough money to remove those trees, or should we save some of this money and devote it to the removal? You know, at one time, when a tree fell, it was an act of God. Today, when a tree falls, it's an act of whoever has the deepest pockets. And trees on the roadside, the town owns those trees, and dead trees that may come down, cause injury, cause property damage, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to make sure that people knew we've got a lot of dead trees on Westboro Road, Ridge Road, North Street, Hopkinton Road. And could someone address this issue?
So the question is, should we put all of the money there or use it for things like this instead of that?
Or devote some of it to the extraordinary tree removal?
Want to do with that or?
Sir, even after we put this $500,000 away, everything passes tonight, we still have about $1.2 billion in free cash that we could utilize to do that.
Okay, so we have enough to handle it.
Yes,
we have
sir.
enough money to handle it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries by a majority. Before we move on to Article 2, I do have the list of people who are visitors, so please be patient. We'll get through them all. Dennis Westgate, DPW Director. Derek Brindisi, Town Manager. David Meridian, State Rep. Kenny Costa, Town Accountant. Chelsea Westgate, Visitor. Lauren Goldberg, Town Council. Pamela Goodwin from Uxbridge. Matthew Batchtold, Library Director. Michelle Sanford, Town Crier. Mark DeFonso, from where? Oh, Fire Chief, sorry, Fire Chief, the new Fire Chief, thank you very, that's right, yeah. Janice Nowicki, Director of Human Services. James Willett, a non-voter from town. Tom Smart, is he a student, Tom Smart, or visitor? Visitor? A visitor, okay, thank you. Scott I'll get it. Scott Calzoleo, Milford Daily News. Paul Marchand. Okay, your motion to accept those visitors. A second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Article 2A. Ms. Richard. There you go.
Sabrina Richard, 125 Westboro Road. Article 2A, I move that the town vote to transfer from the Community Preservation Fund fiscal year 2019 estimated annual revenues, the sums set forth below, to the following Community Preservation Fund accounts to meet the requirements of Mass General Law, Chapter 44B, Section 6. Historic Resources account, $43,488.57. The Open Space account, $43,488.57. The Community Housing account, $44,488.57. And to place any remaining fiscal year 2019 estimated annual revenues in a so-called fiscal year 2019 undesignated budgeted reserve.
Second, moved and seconded. FinCom recommendation.
Favorable action, Mr. Moderator.
CPC recommendation.
Favorable action?
Okay, any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
I think he has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon me, Mr. Robertson. Should have looked up there.
Thank you, John Robertson, Mechanic Street. I was just wondering, what is the total estimated revenues and where do they come from?
In the CPC funds?
In the CPC fund that we're now transferring.
Okay, Jonas. Okay.
It's actually $434,887.70. What we've done is take 10% and put it in each account. This is revenue that is collected from the town. This does not involve state revenues at this time. We have not yet gotten in the estimated state revenues. That will come later in November.
Okay. So basically, it's this number times 10.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, because these are 10%. All right, sorry for the premature action before on the voting. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. 2B.
I move that the town vote to transfer the total sum of $291,976 from the Community Preservation Fund to meet the 6-year payment of debt service owed on the general obligation town hall renovation bonds, with $43,488.57 from the Historic Resources account and $248,486.43 from the Community Preservation undesignated account.
Second, moved and seconded. FinCom recommendation.
Favorable action, Mr. Moderator.
CPC recommendation.
Favorable action.
Any discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Article 2C.
2C, I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $10,000 from the CPA Historic Resources Reserve account for costs to professionally document historically significant properties that are 75 years or older, including properties that may be at high risk for demolition. Such funds to be expended within 5 years, with any sum remaining at the end of that period to be closed out to
to the CPA Historic Resources Reserve, with the Upton Historical Commission to submit annual reports to the Community Preservation Committee at the end of each fiscal year.
Second.
Moved and seconded. FinCom recommendation?
Favorable action, Mr. Moderator.
CPC recommendation? Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries by majority. Article 3 was withdrawn. Article 4.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 to fund and implement the cost items of the first fiscal year of the collective bargaining agreement between the town of Upton and the Teamsters Local 170 Department of Public Works Supervisors Contract.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. FinCom recommendation?
Favorable action.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please. Thank you very much. Any discussion on the motion?
Question?
Question?
Yes, sir. Steve
Please,
here.
please come to the microphone, sir. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Please state your name and address when you come to the microphone.
Steve Thayer, 20 Francis. I guess the question, the difference between the slide and what was read, it says raise the money as opposed to raise or get from free cash or other available funds. So which is it? Because the article that's in the handout has the other options. So
Okay.
what's the source of the $5,000?
It's raise and appropriate.
So,
So we're talking a tax.
Correct.
so just as a general statement, in every article, it gives you general ideas of where money might come from. The motion itself is specific about where the money comes from. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries by majority. Article 5. Anybody got the motion for Article 5, please? Mr. Bull.
Ted Bull, working 15 Hickory Lane, treasurer collector. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,265 to pay for interest costs associated with the issuance of a $1.76 million TIP, Quint, and Bridge bond anticipation note.
Okay, second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. FinCom recommendation?
Favorable action, Mr. Moderator.
Ms. Walker, can you have the card, please? Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Article 6. Mr. Patel.
Article 6, I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash a sum of $410,000 for the design, project oversight, and replacement of the Upton Police Station roof and HVAC system, including all expenses incidental and related.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. FinCom recommendation?
Favorable action, Mr. Moderator.
Came from free cash. Any discussion on the motion?
I was just wondering why it's going to cost $400,000 to repair a roof. Like, it seems like you could make a whole new building for $400,000.
Okay, anybody want to address that?
So many of you who attended an annual town meeting may remember that we requested $8,000 to hire an engineering firm called Gale & Associates to come in and analyze and do an assessment of both the fire station and the police station. Their analysis came back and suggested that it's going to cost approximately $260,000 just for the repair of the roof, with an additional upwards of $60,000 to replace the HVAC systems. And then there's additional dollars to design the roof repair, and then the project management oversight. And as you can see from these pictures, these are the pictures that were taken by Gale & Associates that depict many of the rips and tears that are currently exist at the police station roof. Next slide. Next slide. So you can see these, and so we intend, if town meeting authorizes, we intend to go into bid this winter so that we can have this roof repaired by early spring.
Any further discussion? Oh, thank you. Capital budget, boy, it's right there.
Favorable action.
Favorable action by capital budget, sorry about that. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Robinson?
John Robinson again. I was wondering, how much free cash do we have to spend this year?
Yes, we have $2,188,358.
Could you repeat that?
$2,188,358.
Now, for those who've been coming to town meetings for many years, they've never heard that kind of answer to that kind of question. So, I'll kidding aside, that is a lot of money, but there's a lot of things that have to be done in the town. Anything else? Before I go, town council. Before we talk about, we were thinking about 2/3 vote because it might be from funds that would require that. But since it's from free cash, would it just require a majority vote? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, good. So this does require a majority vote. Any other, no more discussion? Okay. All those in favor of fixing the roof there and all the other expenses, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Motion carries by majority. We have one other visitor from Ms. Corey Savick, Reverend from the United Parish of Upton, has come. Is there a motion to accept her as a visitor?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, Article 7. Mr. Battaglia.
Article 7, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 or any other sum for the design, project oversight, and repair of the Upton Fire Station roof, including all expenses incidental and related.
Mr. Battaglia. You can't say or any other sum. If you want $100,000, then that's what it is.
Read it right out the copy.
I understand
All
that.
right, that's
So,
fine by me.
no problem.
$100,000 is the sum,
Thank
no
you.
other cents.
Okay, thank you very much. No problem.
For me.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Second, FinCom recommendation?
Favorable action, Mr. Moderator.
This is to raise and appropriate. Okay, any other discussion? Capital budget?
Favorable action.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Yes, sir. Yeah, please come to the microphone, sir. Thank you.
Hi, Steve Sargent.
Yep.
Earlier, to respond to a question, there was a comment made that said there'd be approximately $1.2 million left in the free cash available after you paid for everything on the warrant. So with $1.2 million still in your hip pocket, not counting your stabilization fund, which is your reserve, yeah? Why are we having to raise taxes or raise some sort of fee to generate $100,000 as opposed to taking it from the free cash available? Which sort of goes back to my question on the $5,000 tab that the town just voted on, where you raised $5K. We got 1.2 still left in this fiscal year. What's 105,000 out of 1.2?
Okay, fair question. Kenny, yeah. The question is why raising?
So, because we have capacity to raise, that we have the ability to raise it.
Okay.
But that is the reason. So there is capacity to raise it on the rate.
Mr. Moderator?
Folks, relax. Mr. Robinson?
In this discussion, I think we are talking about the levy limit and how close we should come, how much money we should spend to get to the limit. And FinCom can explain it better than I can, but in general, over the years, we've always tried to approach the levy limit. So that, because once you lose that amount of money, then your levy limit will drop. So if there's any question, I think the FinCom could probably clarify.
Fair, excellent point. So the question was, why not free cash if the money's there? And the answer was because we can raise it up to a levy limit I don't know how much you all understand that or want to understand it any better. If anybody needs the FinCom to explain it, I know Mr. Flaherty has explained it in the past if necessary. So, Mr. Flaherty, could you just take a minute or so and just sort of explain how that works briefly? Because I think it would be helpful for the townspeople. And you can use the microphone if you feel you need to, Mr. Flaherty.
I think everybody can hear me. As I've said many times, I've done this period of time much longer than I ever expected when I started doing this 30-something years ago. When you talk about Proposition 2.5, it's an animal unlike anything else. There is a 19 or 20-page publication called The Primer on Proposition 2.5. Mr. Accountant, you got one up there handy, or?
I don't mean to hand it out or anything, but you
I thought I
could
had
briefly...
one. In any event, if you want to know how Proposition 2.5 works, go to the Mass Government Division of Local Services and put in Primer Proposition 2.5. And I'm going to tell you, you can read it 15 times and you still won't know what it says. All right? Back to Mr. Moderator's point, there is this thing called the levy limit. It's how much money you are legally allowed to raise. It can increase 2.5% per year. In addition, what goes into this is what they call new growth. That's how much additional tax revenue you are able to generate because of new properties coming on or properties which have met an improvement of a certain percentage. All right? What we're talking about here is the point being is to keep to the levy as close as you can, as Mr. Robertson referred to. Because if you don't, you have what is called excess capacity. Excess capacity is that amount of money between what you could levy and what you actually levy. When we get done here tonight, if everything goes the way it is, we're going to be talking about probably 225 to 240,000 in excess capacity. Now, what does that mean? That means that we are going out of this town meeting leaving $250,000 odd on the table that we're not taxing, we're not collecting, we're not levying. Put in perspective, if you take that over 2 years, over 5 years, and you say you need money for different things, that's $1 million, ladies and gentlemen. That's $1 million. That is why the Finance Committee has always pushed, along with the accountant, along with the manager, to try to keep the levy as high, as close to the levy limit as you can. That use the number 250,000, that $250,000 will go back, it stays in the levy limit. So next year, you can tax that $250,000. But you don't get it this year. So going forward, it's there. What does it amount to on the tax rate? Peanuts. Peanuts. Help me out, Mr. Kenneth. What did we say it was? Like 30 cents? Yes, 30 cents. It amounts to, when we get out of here tonight, if everything goes as we anticipated, you're going to see the tax rate would be able to have gone up about another 30 cents. Doesn't sound like much. But I suppose if you get a $700,000, $800,000 house, it's a lot of money. All right? I don't know if I answered the gentleman's question. Like I say, you want to learn about Proposition 2.5? It's called the Primer on Proposition 2.5. Mass Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services. Put it in there.
Thank you, Mr. Flaherty. Okay? Any other discussion? Chris?
Building commissioner, I'm just wondering, every roof has a guarantee on it. It's either 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I'm wondering if there was a guarantee on this roof.
Well, all I know, I mean, I don't know what the answer to that question is, but when that roof was done, I wasn't moderator yet, so that's more than 25 years ago.
I was building inspector.
I know, yeah, you've been doing it longer than me.
On the roof, did anybody look into that? Maybe we get a few bucks out of that.
Okay.
The manufacturer is either granulars, that's because the roof falls apart.
Chief?
Chief DeFranco from the Fire EMS Department. Unfortunately, the area of roof that needs to be repaired is an area that is subjected to snow and ice. And there was been a couple of years where our staff has gone up to remove the snow and ice, and we've done the damage to remove it. So any warranty that would have been applicable, I would assume would be null and void. That's why we need to try to repair it properly this time and make sure that this event doesn't occur in the future.
Okay, thank you. I was mistaken. I was thinking the police station. That was many years ago, but this is the fire station. So, yes, Mr. Flaherty?
So another 2 cents of this thing with the roofs. What you have to understand is that these are public projects. You can't call up your friend Jim the roofer and say, come put a new roof on my building. It has to go through the bidding process. You have to have documents. You have to have engineering. And the biggest thing when it drives a public project, it's called prevailing wage. There's a lot of things that go into this, but that's why these public projects cost so much.
Yes, sir?
Yeah, my name's Ralph Whitney, Hartford Ave. I was wondering what that roof right there cost you?
Which roof are you talking about?
The roof that you're replacing.
The roof that we're...
Is that a $200,000 roof too?
That was part of the original.
That was part of the original fire department.
30 years old.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion from Article 7, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no?
No.
Motion carries by majority. So before we get into Article 8, oh, capital budget, were you in favor of that?
Yes, we were in favor.
Sorry. That was maybe on 6, but I'm not sure. Okay, thank you. I was told that I had asked Mr. Rowani. So, okay, Article 8. Before we have a motion on that, let me just briefly explain the logistics of how this is going to happen. So, Articles 8A, B, C, and D all relate to the marijuana question with regard to the legalization of it, if we have it in town, where the locations would be in town where we would have it. So, we will allow general discussion on the entire article of Article 8. Okay, all of them can be talked about. Okay, there will be a presentation and then we'll get into open discussion. After that's complete, we will then ask for a motion to vote on 8A. Okay? If 8A passes, my understanding is that there will probably be a motion to then pass over B, C, and D. And if that votes yes, then that means we have 8A, and we move on to 9. Okay? If 8A doesn't pass, we will then go to 8B. Vote on that. It will either pass or fail. If it passes, then we will probably have a motion to pass over C and D, and then we move on. And so on to letter C, and then to ultimately letter D. Okay? So like I said, open discussion on all 4, and then we'll vote on them A, B, C, and D in the process that I described. One last thing which is important for me to say to you, and I'm only saying this because this is my understanding and town council can give greater clarification to this. If the town doesn't vote for any of these, A, B, C, or D, then what you have decided to do is allow for the least restrictive thing to occur with regard to marijuana being allowed in the community. Okay? So that would be the least restrictive thing to do if nothing passes. Okay? I believe that's by, and I was going to get to that, right. And because these are all zoning changes, okay, zoning bylaw changes, they will require a 2/3 majority vote. So, listen to what everyone has to say, ask questions, then we'll vote on A as long as you understand what A means, and then we'll go from there. Okay? Does that make sense? The logistics of how this is going to happen? Okay. So, I assume there's some sort of a so let's make a motion first, okay? Then the motion would be for 8A, then there will be general discussion, and then we'll go from there. So, is that okay, or?
I want to see the summary so folks know what they're voting on before they vote today.
So, okay, so let me ask you a question.
Let's do a quick presentation.
That's fine. So, you want to do a presentation before we have the initial motion? That's totally okay to do that. So, Mr. Brindisi, go ahead.
Okay, again, Derek Brindisi, town manager. So I just want to spend about 5 minutes summarizing what we're going to vote on, so it's very clear. Let me start off by saying that we cannot prohibit medicinal marijuana at this time. So no vote that you take tonight is going to prohibit medicinal marijuana. Right now, the Cannabis Control Commission is not allowing that because of the way the statute was written. So that being said, the Economic Development Committee worked very closely with the Board of Selectmen to try to identify what types of uses, and those uses across the axis on the top line, what uses in what district or what area of a town would those uses be allowed. So I will briefly give you a summation of each one of the articles. So Article 8A, if you were to vote in favor, again, a 2/3 vote for Article 8A, would prohibit all types of retail marijuana facilities. So prohibit all retail marijuana facilities. It would allow for manufacturing of marijuana in what is known as Marijuana Overlay District East and West. So let me just show you a quick map. So again, the EDC, working with the Board of Selectmen, had identified these two areas of town. The commercial and industrial section, and this commercial industrial section. So one, as you notice, the one on the west is the area located by the train yard, and then this section, which is known as east, is the area going towards Hopedale and Milford, down 140. So those are the only two areas we're talking about citing marijuana types of facilities. Can we go back to the table? So again, in MOD East and West, we would allow for manufacturing. Medicinal would be allowed only in the east section. Agriculture only in the east. The laboratories would be allowed in the east and west. Now, we have these other two columns because I think you need to be aware of what a yes vote, what the follow-on actions that need to take place. So if you were to vote yes on 8A, that you want this one to pass, because we are prohibiting retail, we have to go to the ballot. So next May, we'll go to the ballot and we'll ask all the voters in town whether or not they agree with prohibiting retail in town. So because we're going to the ballot, we have to extend the moratorium, right? Because we need to get us to the ballot question in May in order to prohibit any type of use until we ask the ballot question. So this is the belts and suspenders approach. We have legislative action town meeting, and then we go to the town ballot in May. So 8B. 8B is not prohibiting any use. However, what it is doing, it's regulating each use in those areas. So again, retail will be allowed only in the East District, not in the West District. And then everything else follows suit with what I had previously explained. Because we are not prohibiting, we don't need to go to the ballot. Therefore, we don't need to extend the moratorium. 8C is a complete ban. We will not allow for any types of marijuana facilities in town. Again, all across the board knows We have to go to the ballot, again, because we have that belts and suspenders approach. So therefore, we need to extend the moratorium to get us to the ballot question in May. So those are the three choices. If they all fail, as the moderator indicated earlier, we need a 2/3 vote on one of the three, 8A, 8B, and 8C. If those do fail, what we will ask you on 8D is to extend the moratorium so that we can go back, do some more research, and maybe come back with a few additional options at the annual town meeting.
Good, thank you. Okay, can I have the mic back?
Quick question, if I may.
I know.
I know I'm not at the microphone, but is the extension of the moratorium automatic with the vote? So if
It's in the bylaw, yes.
If A or C passes, it automatically by rule extends the moratorium that was previously.
The way the bylaw is written in your text, you'll see that there's a moratorium extension written into that bylaw. Right now, we have a moratorium that expires December 31st, 2018.
Okay, please, hang on. I allowed him to sit there, I really shouldn't have, so please come to the microphone. I know there's gonna be questions. Okay. And that's fine. This is a very important issue for the town. So,
I don't know if this works.
it does.
All right, Mary Price, I don't know Lane in Upton, and my question is this. As I read this ahead of time, it looked like if we vote no on A, no on B, no on C, then we can vote yes on the moratorium. Am I correct so far on that?
Yes.
Okay, the next part is, if we don't vote no on all three, A, B, and C, and we vote yes on either or any or one of them, does that preclude being able to do a moratorium?
Yes.
Okay, so then, if we want more time for this in a general way, it's best to vote no on the first three. If I got it
So-
right here.
The moratorium would extend you an additional 6 months.
Right.
Until June 30th,
Right,
2019.
in other words, no decision tonight on A, B, and C, because we're going to give ourselves more time.
Well, so, we really,
Folks, please
what we
don't
really
chatter
need to do
about it, please.
is try to pass either 8B, 8A, 8B, and 8C. The moratorium is going to just buy us another 6 months.
Right.
There aren't going to be any legislative changes or any regulation changes that's going to alter any other new options.
But why do we have to now vote for one or the other of A, B, or C? What's the harm in giving us more time to decide? You know, I'm thinking things will get going in other locations, other towns, see how it goes, and then maybe we'll get some feedback. We'll have a better idea of what we should be voting yes on, instead of voting yes tonight.
Okay, that's a fair comment. Town council.
Mr. Moderator, through you. Essentially, in order to restrict any type of marijuana establishment, so whether to just restrict retail or to restrict all of them straight across like in option C, you need both the town meeting vote and a ballot question. And the ballot question has to match town meeting's vote. Unlike most ballot questions that just say, do you want to do X, Y, or Z? In this case, the actual bylaw has to appear on the ballot. So if this is pushed off further till the spring, number one, our expectation is that the AG will not approve any more moratoria after this round, because municipalities have had a significant amount of time since November of 2016 to act on marijuana-related questions. So that's number one. So that gives you just until essentially the end of June. In addition, you need time to go to town meeting and vote on a bylaw. And if the intent is to restrict any of the types of marijuana establishments like retail, you'll also need to do that at an election. So the way this is planned right now, the question, if town meeting voted on A or C in the affirmative by 2/3 vote, the question of whether to so limit the town with respect to marijuana would appear on the annual town election ballot in the spring. If you don't vote tonight, then, and you vote in the spring instead, you'll need to have a special election on top of that in order to have that all occur before the end of June. So the short answer is, the reason to act tonight is because you've been putting it off and putting it off, and if you wait till the spring, you'll wind up having to have a special election. Now, that may be the policy decision of this body, but that is the repercussion, is a special election will be required if there's any intent to restrict any type of marijuana establishment.
Okay?
Just one more thing.
Yes?
I can understand how this is working in a governmental way or whatever, but I think this is a very serious matter. I'm myself personally in favor of medical marijuana. I don't have a problem with that. But I don't know how regulated and how everything is going to be really overseen with caution. And I think where it's all new to all of us, it doesn't hurt to watch and see what happens. When you say the detriment is it's going to require another town meeting or special meeting or whatever you worded it to be, I don't see that's a hardship for us to go to another meeting for that. But as I understand it, are there any other negative aspects if we don't vote yes on at least an A, a B, or a C, other than that special meeting?
It sounds like that's what the answer is. So the answer is there would have to be a special election.
Special.
Correct.
Well, election meaning you go and you do it on a ballot vote like we did,
Right.
just that kind of thing rather than town meetings.
Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
For you. Just two other things I want to point out. Number one, the ballot question, as I indicated, has to have the actual text of the bylaw. So if, for example, the town tried to facilitate having the election, let's say, at the annual election, but then town meeting made any changes in the bylaw, it would nullify the election. And so town meeting would have, there need to be another town election.
Yeah.
So I was
Well,
saying,
let her finish. Let her
Mr.
finish.
Moderator, so through you, the question of whether that's the decision that this body wants to make is a different question.
Right.
The positives and negatives are for the body to decide. The one other thing I do just want to point out is that the Cannabis Control Commission, and I didn't bring them tonight, but their regulations, and the Finance Committee Chair was talking about the 20-page Proposition 2.5 booklet, and the booklet of the regulations from the state is about 2 to 3 inches thick. It's a very highly regulated industry. I'm certain we'll all learn something as the months go by, but there is already in place a very strict regulatory framework for marijuana.
okay, so
Okay,
when you
thank you.
refer, I'm sorry, I thought it was my turn.
Well, what is what I'm calling you? So go ahead.
Okay, thank you, I
Yeah,
apologize.
that's okay.
I'm awful at this.
That's all right.
But when you refer to bylaws, if it has to go to another electoral thing, then it has to be worded exactly like the bylaws. Are we not reading in here what's appropriate for what the bylaws are?
Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
So today, if town meeting were to vote on A or C in the affirmative, then that exact bylaw would go on the ballot at the annual town election.
And so we still have a chance then to vote against it.
Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
If town meeting voted no, if the town election voted no on that bylaw, then there would need to be another town meeting to regulate marijuana before the expiration of the moratorium. And again, I think this is one of those situations where it's hard to tell today how quickly marijuana companies are going to be moving by that time. If the town wants to regulate marijuana, it has an opportunity to do that right now through the different policy decisions that the Economic Development Committee and the Board of Selectmen have presented today through these bylaws.
And one other thing, not to get into the discussion, but just from a logistical point of view, if the town votes for, let's say, A or C, and then at the election, they vote no to that, there comes the distinct possibility of, because we do nothing, then we have the least restrictive thing happen. So that's just one thing to keep in the back of your mind as you're thinking about what you want to vote on tonight.
Mr.
Is
Moderator?
that possibility?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I just add to that so that people understand what that means
Right.
in a practical sense? Anywhere in town where retail sales are allowed, if there's no regulation, if town meeting votes no on all of these, then on December 31st, or actually January 1st, a marijuana establishment could open and provide retail sales of marijuana subject to licensing in any place where retail sales are allowed in town. In terms of laboratories, instead of it being just in the MOD East and West, as long as laboratories are allowed under the zoning bylaw, a marijuana company could come in and open a laboratory in any zoning district where laboratories are allowed. So that, when we say least restrictive, what we mean is the marijuana industry would be subject to the same rules in the same places as every other industry or company that wants to open a business here in town.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moderator, and I'm
Come on,
done.
please, yeah.
I just want to say,
Go ahead.
once it's here, it's regulated. But who in our town is going to be responsible for being the overseer to see that the regulations are followed?
That's a fair question. Who is responsible for that?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
So there's several different entities that would be responsible. So through one, there's a site plan process and a special permit process with the planning board as the special permit granting authority. So in order to open and function, the marijuana establishment has to come in and go through two very significant processes. And part of the process that they're required to go through for the site plan and for the special permit is to demonstrate that they've complied with safety, security requirements. And the state is setting a bar that's exceptionally high for that. So the town is layering its requirements on top of that. In addition, they'd be subject to fire code requirements, building code requirements, and would be required to comply with the terms of their permits. And obviously, the police department would have jurisdiction as well if issues were to arise.
So on a regular basis, Mr. Moderator, it's the police department and the planning board.
Members, right. Good. Thank you.
I
Sir?
thank you for your patience. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
David Brooks, 3 Cranberry Circle. My wife and I recently moved back from Washington State, which legalized marijuana in 2012, so we have some experience of what happens to the community. So I spoke back and talked from some of that experience. I think the most important thing to say is there has been little impact on daily life in Washington. It's a bigger place, there's more room for establishments, with 3 notable exceptions I'd like to draw your attention to. One particularly impinges on this grid. In your regulations, location and dimensional controls, 675 sections, 6 and 7 for the minutes. One says that all marijuana establishments shall conform to the signage requirements in section 512 of the zoning bylaws, which I don't have with me, but 2 things that really impinge on our daily lives are enormous billboards on arterial roads that advertise marijuana. I don't want my young kids to see that. But worst of all, there may be signage requirements that an establishment is off in a business district, but at a nearby intersection, maybe 200, 300, 400 feet away, you'll find a guy with bearing boards as though he was selling mattresses, waving at everybody, putting his thumbs up, saying, go over there to get high. That's the impression that's left, and for those of us who don't want to know about this, it's a little objectionable. So I hope that either the book referred to by the town council or our own signage laws will help address that particular impingement on our daily driveways. That's the first of my 2 points.
Okay. Why don't we do this? Let's look at signage, one thing, and people just standing around and advertising sort of on the street.
Yeah, and away from the shop itself.
Away from the place
signage is
itself.
applied to the retail establishment itself, but may not apply to the guy in the street.
Yeah, so what kind of restrictions are there going to be on that sort of thing? Could someone address that?
We're going to defer this to our zoning officers here to get to the signage questions.
Okay.
Sarah, we already have a very, very restrictive sign bylaw, so I don't think this would be a problem.
Okay.
Okay, that's, a lot of times people forget about the code enforcement, that's what.
No. We don't have big signs in
This
town.
process has come to us, then to the planning board, and then, I refuse it, and goes to the planning board to review. And there's a lot of eyes on it.
Okay.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
I can add to that activity in the public way is subject to regular public safety considerations, so that would also be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. The other item of experience comes with odor control, which is section 7 here. In the Seattle area, there is a manufacturing establishment in the less wealthy suburb of Renton, and it stinks. And I'm sure they have odor control regulations, but by the time the thing is built, it's kind of hard to rip it down because it makes it smell. The state, or maybe the county, did tell them to put in cleaning equipment. They put in cleaning equipment, it still stinks. So I think that means that people who live on the end of Glenview, which impinges on MOD East, might regret that you filled in that box under 8A and 8B to allow manufacturing both east and west. There are houses nearby those that could easily get the waft of the smell. By the time it's built, it may be hard to enforce the odor control regulation.
Okay.
That's just a comment. I'm not asking you to modify that group right now, but that's the basis of our experience.
Okay, thank you.
Jim Floyd, 10 Henry's Path. A couple of quick questions. First, if I look at A and C, if either one of those passes, are we voting to extend the moratorium just on retail?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The moratorium is extended over the entire period on all of it. So it's essentially saying, let's get from now till the ballot question without a change. Because again, if ballot question voters turn down, there may need to be a different approach taken.
I'm wondering what criteria was used to create each of the MODs with particular emphasis on the west side. I understand the east side because that's sort of a tucked away, more commercially driven area, and the only thing I see on the west side is the railroad. Well, houses, but I mean non-houses.
No, there is a lot of houses.
Wait a minute.
Excuse me.
Mr. Richards. Can we have the map up here? Because it's important when we're talking about this to put the map up here.
The commercial industrial area goes from, well, in that area.
Which one, west or east?
East.
East. Down here.
I'm sorry, west.
West? No? Okay, up here.
All right, up there, 80%, I dare to say, is houses. People live in. Okay, it's all along 140, and I think my own personal opinion, it's a very poor place.
It's 140 there, I believe?
Yes, it's all residential in that area. You know, it's commercial, it's pre-existing non-conforming homes. They were built when the hat factory was thriving.
Sure.
So that's,
Okay, yeah, I
that's the
understand.
poor area, as far as I'm concerned.
All right.
So, Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Brandisi.
the intent of tonight's meeting was to come with options for the folks to consider.
Sure.
And so part of those options was to say, given the fact that when this was passed 2 years ago at the state election, 52% of the town's voters voted in favor of marijuana sales and distribution here in town. 48% said no. So we recognize that the majority of the voters said yes to marijuana. So the Economic Development Committee said, okay, if we need to bring something to town meeting, but we need to bring something in a very smart way that we can regulate these. And so the decision was to say, if we're going to regulate these, it makes the most sense to regulate these in the existing commercial industrial zones, knowing that we had to bring something to town meeting for folks to consider.
Okay. Yeah, that's an important, if I could just clarify, the reason why we have to deal with this is because the town of Upton voted yes 2 years ago. If the town of Upton had voted no, then we would be going through a whole different scenario. So that's one important point. I just want to emphasize that people understand. Go ahead, Steve.
If I could, just an addendum to what Mr. Rhodes said, I'd also point out that smack dab in the middle of MOD West are 2 high schools as well. And again, the big question there is all I see there is the railroad, and then everything else I see is either high schools or it's residential. So to that point, I would wonder, as we walk our way through 8A, B, C, and potentially D, are we empowered to introduce an amendment that then drops out MOD West and only votes on MOD East?
That is a great question. So,
Absolutely, that's part of the debate to offer an amendment. I can say that in the bylaws, there are buffer zones built in, especially for schools and daycares and the like. So the schools are in this section, the UBT's here and NIMOC's here. And so it requires a 500-foot buffer currently in the bylaw.
I think these are the railroad tracks, is that correct? Right, so Valley Tech and the high school are in this area here, I believe. So,
So not on the extremity. Not on the extremity of MOD West, but pretty much.
no,
right
it's
on the
not.
side.
It is right in the middle of it, because those are right near the railroad tracks. So,
Okay, just a follow-up comment, and then I have one final question. I apologize for taking so much time. When the railroad first came in, they were storing creosote-soaked.
What does this have to do with this?
Well, it has a lot to do with it. I'll get to my point. I'm just slow.
Quickly, yeah. No,
Okay.
we'll get to the point.
They were storing creosote-soaked telephone poles. I live on the opposite side of Blackstone Valley Tech, and we certainly could smell those there. It was all but accurate. It was terrible. My last question then is, we have 8A, B, C, and D. Do we have to vote on those in alphabetical order, or can we move to vote on one versus the other?
Okay.
And I'll let you answer that, but I'll get away from the microphone. I come to the microphone reluctantly, but once I get here, it's tough to make it leave.
There's a lot of folks in town that are like that. So, it's up to the board. It is their motion. So, they've explained to me that the way in which they plan on doing the motion is to do A first. So, that is their prerogative to make that motion, no? Or not?
I think we would all agree that if there's a motion on the floor, that we would certainly take them out of order.
Okay, that's your choice to do, essentially. Because right now, we are still just discussing it. Right now, there is no motion on the floor. Okay?
There is a motion.
There was not a motion made yet.
There is no motion. Fine. Then any-
Right, this is still the general debate before a motion is made.
Someone would have to make a motion to take it out of order.
Well, I understand that. I mean, and if that has to happen, that will happen. But my answer to the individual's question is, it's my understanding that the Board of Selectmen, their plan is to offer A first. That's my understanding, but it doesn't mean it has to be that way. So let me say it that way. Okay, yes, ma'am.
And the Brisky, 250 Melford Street. I just going to ask for clarification, which I think you explained, but I didn't understand. Okay, I'm going to question. If we vote, if we say we vote no on A and C, and it goes to the town ballot, and they vote yes, then that means you kind of start all over again?
You said no on A and C. What about B? Did you
Well,
mean B would be
right
yes?
now, those, I suppose it would be any of them, A, B, C, or D. If we vote no on one and the town votes in the special election yes, did I understand you right that then it starts all over again?
Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
If the town votes yes on A or C, then A or C would be presented to the voters at the annual town election. Whichever if town meeting voted on yes on one of them.
I don't think that's what I'm asking. I'm saying if tonight we vote, say we vote no on A and C. But basically is, we vote one thing tonight, and at the special election, they vote the opposite.
Mr. Moderator.
Right.
Yeah, there's no, it's not expected at this time that the board would put forward a question on the annual town election ballot unless town meeting approved A or C.
Right.
Because you need both the ballot question and the bylaw for it to be binding on the town. So if town meeting voted no on A and no on C, there would be nothing for the board to put forward in the spring.
So there would be no election because they voted no tonight.
And then for further clarification, what you're saying, if we vote no on everything tonight, then you go to the least restrictive.
That's right.
Okay. I think I've got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then just a quick question through the moderator to the town manager. when you said Upton voted yes on marijuana, that was on the state ballot? We
Correct.
didn't vote anything on the town, right?
No, that was
Okay.
2016, when the
Yeah, the
state had
state
to vote.
ballot, yeah, okay, thanks.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes,
I just
please.
want to clarify, the town manager's statement is 100% correct. The town of Upton voted 52% to 48% about. The question that was asked on that ballot was not, are you in favor of selling marijuana in the town of Upton?
Right.
After that question was passed statewide by pretty much the same margin, the legislature tried to fix certain aspects of the law that weren't written in a way that made it easy to implement. And one of the things that the legislature did is they said if a town voted yes on approving the legalization of recreational marijuana, then in order to limit any one kind or limit it all, there needs to be a ballot question as well. So that's why you're in this spot. In towns that voted no, there's no ballot question. They could still vote to adopt a bylaw prohibiting one or more kinds, but there's no ballot question.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Bob Prague, 12 Wildwood. Regulation is something that I know about, having spent 10 years working with pharmaceutical companies that have products in the regulatory pipeline. I have looked at the regulations that states have put in place, and I find them really, really good. Very, very good quality regulations. I think everyone's going to find that, well, however this happens, it isn't going to affect the quality of our life very much because it's very, very, and I emphasize this, very heavily regulated by the state. Personally, I don't care which way we go, one way or the other. It doesn't matter to me, but I just want to reassure people it isn't going to be a huge change to the town. Thank you.
Gene Burnett, 228 Madison Street, Chairman of the Economic Development Committee. I think we've heard a lot of questions about the bylaw. I think there needs to be a little bit of background about why we would even consider this. Besides we're going to have the least restrictive zoning, the least restrictive laws if we don't approve something. So when we were approached by the selectmen through the town manager to make a recommendation on the zoning bylaws and how and where we would think that it would be appropriate to have any kind of marijuana business, the consideration was kind of around noisome trades. The other consideration was that these manufacturing or marijuana-related uses offer very, very significant economic benefits to the town. Now, we've met with a couple of different companies about what they would propose, and a retail establishment that approached us said that they thought they would generate $600,000 a year in tax revenue and host community fees for the community. That would make it about the largest taxpayer in the town of Upton. And that was out of a storefront of 2,000 square feet. So we're not talking about massive developments. The reason we looked at the Mod West and the appropriate uses in Mod West is that the laboratory and manufacturing applications, as they have been described to us and the research that we've done, again, the laboratory would be something in the neighborhood of 3,000 square feet, an entirely contained building, just like it would be for any engineering or pharmaceutical lab that's testing and doing quality control. Manufacturing, again, is not the growing of marijuana, it's the manufacturing of products related to that. CBD oils, other types of refined products. That's what manufacturing is. Again, that's in an enclosed brick building, steel building, or something of that kind. So we felt that no real retail outlet should be anywhere near the downtown area. However, there are areas in the west side that a laboratory would fit appropriately, or that a small manufacturing facility would fit appropriately. In MOD East, because it's the nature of the area, with it being dominated by used car dealerships and that kind of thing, there's a real emphasis on our part of the Economic Development Committee to see some other type of commercial use in town that generates tax revenue to offset the burden on residential owners of the town. We're completely unbalanced in this community. We don't have any commercial tax base to speak of. The commercial tax base that we do have is very low quality, not high use, not high quality. So without making any value judgments at all, and purely looking at this from the point of view of an economic development perspective, and understanding that if we don't do anything, we get the least restrictive use, this is our opportunity to shape the kind of business we would like to see, the location where we would like to see those businesses, and also, an opportunity in many cases to generate some substantial revenue for the town. The other way it's been described to us, a lot of times the retail outlet would be combined with a grow facility in that eastern side. That would about double or triple the amount of tax revenue from that type of operation. Now, in Milford, they've permitted a grow facility. It's producing a huge amount of tax revenue. It's invisible. Nobody even knows it's there. In Washington State, in Colorado, these things are regulated. In Massachusetts, they're much more highly regulated. It's just the nature of our state. When it comes to odor, we have very strong odor control laws in Massachusetts. You're not allowed to produce an odor at the boundary of your property. So that's going to be imposed, that would be regulated by the Board of Health here in town, and they would go to DEP or the Cannabis Control Commission to enforce those types of laws. So again, without making any value statements, without saying what you should choose, just keep in mind that we did carefully consider where these things should be located and what the potential economic benefit was to the community.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Sir?
Greg Mann, 49 East. If we were to vote on one, which
let's put that back
rejects retail, and that went to a ballot, then that were rejected, would 8B automatically go into effect?
No. My understanding is what we recommend tonight goes to the ballot, and that's it. If it's voted no, then we're back to square zero. Right. So we are going to pick one of these four, or maybe nothing. Okay, but we're not going to pick more than one. If that's what your question is.
No, you're only going to pick one.
We're going to pick one, right.
My concern is what happens if the election.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
We would anticipate a special town meeting to vote on a different option. If A or C passes tonight and fails at the polls, then you'd be in the same situation you're in right now, in that you'd have just a very short time period before the moratorium would expire. And so, obviously, it's up to the board, but it's likely a special town meeting would follow.
Right. I mean, I have no problem with the rest of these, other than retail, because they bring in money. Medical is, I believe in that. But I moved here 2 years ago from California, and they have 139 retail outlets. Only Oregon and Colorado have more. But there's 14 in Sacramento where the legislature is, but there's only one in Los Angeles, because the street price in Los Angeles is less than half of the retail price.
That's actually a shame, but folks, sir.
Bailiff for Russell Ave. I could use a little guidance in lots of things, but on this matter particularly. Is there a recommendation either from the police or the moderator or town council? Are you guys making any recommendations to us?
Okay, I'm not recommending anything. I'm just running the meeting. Okay. So thank you for asking for my recommendation anyways. But the police, I don't know if the chief is here. Chief Bradley, if you wanted to comment on that?
There you are.
So, my position hasn't changed since 2016. I'm not in favor of retail or any marijuana facilities in the town of Upton. If the town chooses to go that route, I would look at and I would remove the west from both manufacturing and laboratories, just because of the density of that area and the schools that are located in that area.
Thank you. Thank you for your opinion. Anything else? Okay, sir?
Ed Berkman, I live on Short Drive. I have two concerns on items within, I think, the first two options. One is there's a prohibition against on-site consumption. If we had an analogous prohibition for an alcohol establishment, and somebody suspected that such consumption was happening, the police have a breathalyzer that would allow them to determine whether in fact it was happening. There is no such analogous device for marijuana. The only accepted tests for marijuana require that you give blood, you give urine. There are devices in development, but none in the field, and correct me if I'm wrong. You have nothing available to you as a field test for marijuana, is that correct?
Chief?
One of the problems we have with marijuana is there are field tests that can detect the presence of THC, but it really doesn't tell us at what level or somebody is impaired by that at the time.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
If I may.
Madam.
I just want to point out that on-site consumption is prohibited right now by state law.
Okay.
Just like with on-premises violations for alcohol beverages, there would be a complaint filed, their license could be suspended, and there would be a hearing before the CCC. It doesn't take away from whether there is or isn't a field sobriety test for marijuana. It's just that there is a process in place to deal with that for now.
Yeah, I guess my concern is a matter of demonstrating whether it occurs or not. And again, with alcohol, it's easy to do. It's not clear.
Yep, come a little bit closer.
Okay, my concern is whether or not it can be demonstrated that it's happening or not. And unless there's something like a breathalyzer, it's not clear to me that it can. Or would we have to modify this to require employees to be subject to giving whatever samples are required to prove that they are or are not consuming marijuana?
Thank you. Yes.
I mean, at this point, I think how it will actually work is somewhat speculative, but the Cannabis Control Commission is a well-funded agency, and they're going to have investigators. Just like the ABCC goes around and does sting operations, I anticipate they'll do the same thing. And, you know, just like any other types of hearings, when there's filed, there'll be testimony. Not a perfect answer, but that's what I anticipate will happen.
Okay, thank you.
Could I raise a second?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
The second concern I have is with odor control. I understand the intent is that the odor may be offensive. My concern is that there are a number of... Marijuana is a very complex, chemically complex substance. There are a number of active things that we know about, THC, CBD, etc. There are a lot of things that you don't see much in the press. For example, a large number of carcinogens have been identified in the marijuana plant, many of them similar or identical to what's in tobacco. The fact that you can't smell this. So it's not clear to me that odor control is adequate to ensure that the butters through a marijuana processing plant aren't being exposed to leaking chemicals that could be harmful. And is there a way to strengthen that rule to ensure that?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
I'm not certain that I can answer all of that, but I will say that the odor control will be part of the site plan and special permit process, and it is regulated by the state.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but the odor control prevents a nuisance. It doesn't ensure the health of the abutters. And that's my concern, that we need to ensure their health if we're going to accept any of these facilities.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smith?
Denise Smith, 11 Maple Street. Just going back to the map for a minute, because I think there might be some confusion on the map, just from what I was hearing. That the mod east and the mod west are the pink C&I zones, not the circles. I think there might have been some confusion, because the schools are definitely outside the C&I zones. They fall within the circle, but the circle is not the mod west or the mod east.
Okay.
That's correct.
Right, the circles are only to try to draw your attention to the C and I zones. We're focusing on the pink areas, as Denise pointed out. Those are the areas in which these facilities would be located. The circles, again, like arrows, are just to draw your attention to those districts.
So, although I'm looking at the map, I think that's Valley Tech on that side, which is outside, but I believe Nipmuc is inside.
No,
You're
neither
in the wrong
school are
section.
inside the commercial industrial zone, neither school. So if you see the little green box, that's our DPW yard. Right
Right.
next door to it would be Nipmuc.
That's right here?
That, the green box, yeah, right there,
Oh, okay.
that's the DPW yard. And right next
Oh, got it. Thank you. Got it now. Guess I can't read a map. Sorry about that, folks. Good, thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none. Okay, well, maybe. Yeah,
Just one thing to note, in those districts, I would say so much of the property is within 500 feet of that district, so those businesses would be prohibited from being within 500 feet.
Okay.
So some of that falls into that zone.
thank you. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious. Is
Name,
there-
please.
Oh, Wendy Hodge, Dogwood Drive. Curious if there's any, I know that, I'm assuming.
Close up. Get closer.
Hello?
Hey.
I'm assuming that these particular four were chosen because of the survey. Is this where most of this came from the regulatory? Is that where this was collected
If you
from?
could put that back up again, please.
Yeah, the town had conducted a survey, and we were able to, I think we received about 25 responses back, and the survey information helped drive some of the decision-making.
Okay. Is there any, it kind of seems like there might be an idea to remove the west. Is that even a possibility at this meeting, or no?
Well, okay. What would have to happen, somebody would have to make an amendment to do that. But we would do that when we have a motion on the floor. Right now, we don't have a motion, but it certainly seems like some people are talking about that. So, okay? So what I'd like to do at this point, it sounds like we've come to a point where we've heard an awful lot, which is good. We will now entertain a motion. Then after we entertain that motion, if there's any other discussion or amendments or anything that need to be made, we can do that. So, who would like to make a motion? Chief Bradley, do you want to make a motion or not?
The question, my motion would be to move 8C ahead of 8A, so at least we can have a discussion about banning all facilities before we make a decision on where we want facilities.
Okay, so there's been a motion to take out of order 8C before we do A, B, or D. There's been a lot of discussion already. My hope is that you guys know whether you want to do that or not. If you want to move them out of order, we'll have that vote now. I don't think we have to have any more discussion about that. Just want to double check. Town Council, I believe that requires just a majority vote. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm double checking right now.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll wait on that quickly. I know. It's here. I'm gonna look. You know, it's funny, when somebody asks a question to do something, and you probably the last time you did it was 8 years ago, you have to double check on that, you know? So that's what I'm going to do here. Advance an article. That's just a majority vote. Okay, so,
There's nothing in the bylaw
okay, thank you very much. Okay, so, the motion which has been seconded is to talk about, is to vote, is to have a motion for C first. Okay, that's what this is. Yes. What?
It says that C, if we vote yes, we're voting for a change in the bylaw to ban all types. Am I right?
That is correct.
We should vote yes on C if we want to ban all types.
And I think that's the reason why somebody wants to make a motion to do that first.
Okay, if we vote no, then we're not banning it.
Well, wait a minute. What I'm going to ask you to vote on now isn't that question.
It's not C?
No, listen, really listen, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that, because I know you're listening. This is complicated. What you're voting on right now is this. Do you want to deal with 8C first, instead of A first? That's what the motion is. Okay? So, if you vote yes here, that means I want to vote on that one first. If you don't want to vote on that one first, then you're going to vote no on this. Then we'll go to A first.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
So that's what the motion is right now.
But it's not been seconded.
Has it been seconded? It was seconded, yes. Well, there's a motion to change the order of how we're going to do this. So that is a motion. Is there any more discussion about that or not? Because if not, I'd like to vote on that so that we can then have a motion to do this. Okay. So right now, if you vote yes, it means we're going to have a motion to deal with C first. Okay? If you vote no, nope, we're going to go A, B, right down the line. Okay? So, all those in favor of taking out of order and doing 8C first, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The majority, the ayes have it. The motion passes to do C first. So, we now need a motion for 8C. So could somebody make a motion, please?
I move that the town vote to amend the zoning bylaws to prohibit all types of adult use recreational marijuana establishments in the town of Upton by deleting the text and title of said action in its entirety and inserting in place thereof a new section 6.7, adult use marijuana establishments prohibited. And further, to provide for an extension of the temporary moratorium on such establishments to allow for the required ballot question to be presented to the voters at an election. All as set forth in the handout entitled November 13th, 2018 Special Town Meeting, Article 8C, Adult Use Marijuana Establishments Prohibited.
Okay, is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to vote for 8C, that is a prohibition, marijuana throughout the entire community, and then to have a ballot question later on in the spring. So could I have the text, please? Now, even though we've had a lot of discussion about this, which is good, it is necessary to have a little more, because now we're really getting into the nuts and bolts of what you might want to do or might not want to do. So right now, the discussion is whether or not we should prohibit it completely or not prohibit it completely. So we need to leave the discussion to that. Okay? So, Mr. McCall. Oh, hang on. What? Pardon me a second. Planning board? Is the planning board here? Do you have a recommendation on 8C here? Sorry. Could you move so that the planning board can give recommendations? Then you have the table. Well,
Yeah, Gary Bohan, 17 Juniper Road, Planning Board. We looked at all four of these articles collectively, and we were generally in favor of some type of zoning action tonight, and are prepared to support any of the four options.
So I guess the four is
Right. Our biggest concern was if the town didn't vote on any of the four.
so you want to make sure they do something.
Correct.
Great, got it, thank you. Okay. Mr. McClung.
Yes, this is just a question for town council. In the selectmen's forum that they ran, I guess it was maybe almost 2 months ago, on this topic, I thought that the town's council mentioned that if we do nothing, it was likely that the Attorney General would not allow continued moratorium. Can you please describe that again?
Mr. Moderator, through you. The Attorney General had indicated a very strong position that they were not going to approve any additional moratorium on this, on zoning for marijuana. We know they've approved 2 zoning bylaws for such purposes, however, since then. So you're correct that it's not a guarantee, but it is anticipated, especially if we were able to demonstrate, which we would be able to, that the town has undertaken a planning process and wasn't able to come up with a plan that everybody could agree with. So if need be, then that's where we would wind up.
Right. But eventually, someday, this has to be dealt with at some point. The state's just not going to say, yeah, keep going.
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, I believe that that June is going to be the end of
Yeah.
permissible moratorium.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay? Okay, so seeing none, now what we're going to vote on is going to be, do you want to say no? Moratorium. Nada, nothing. Okay? If you feel that way, you vote yes. If you don't want to have a moratorium, complete moratorium, then you'd vote no. Remember, this requires a 2/3 majority vote, so just think about that. Okay? Any questions before we have the final vote on this? Okay, thank you. So,
Could you just repeat that one more time?
yeah, this is what it means. Right now, the motion we have on the floor is 8C, which is a complete moratorium. I'm sorry. Don't say moratorium. Thank you, Madam Town Clerk. Ban. I think you understood that, but I was using the wrong word. A complete ban on marijuana in town, and it would necessitate a ballot question at the election. Okay? So you all understand that. All right? So, complete ban, ballot question in May. All right? Okay. And if you feel that way, you vote yes. If you don't feel that way, you vote no. And then we'll look at some of the other options. Okay. All those in favor of a complete ban signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The motion does not pass by 2/3 majority. So, we need to have another motion. If I hear nothing else, we go to A.
Well, you need to explain the 2/3, and that's your order.
That was not 2/3, no. It could have been a majority, maybe, but it clearly was not 2/3. That's how I heard it, so.
Any one of these.
Any one of them needs 2/3, right? Right, we've explained that, yep. So,
I move that the town vote to amend section 6.7 of the zoning bylaws to prohibit retail sales of adult use recreational marijuana in the town of Upton and to create 2 new marijuana overlay districts allowing certain other types of marijuana establishments, as that term is defined in GL 94G, section 1, to be located in the existing C&I districts and to amend the zoning map accordingly, and further to provide for an extension of the temporary moratorium on such establishments to allow for the required ballot question to be presented to the voters at an election. All is set forth in the handout entitled November 13th, 2018 Special Town Meeting. Article 8A, Prohibition of Retail Marijuana Establishments, Creation of Marijuana Overlay Districts, and Regulation of Other Types of Marijuana Establishments.
is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. And if you could put the, Sandra, if you could put the other thing back up there that shows what A says again. Back one more. The chart. Okay, so again, 8A means no to retail, manufacturing, east and west, medicinal, east, agricultural, east, laboratories, east and west. Okay, we extend the moratorium, and it will require a ballot question because there is some restriction to this. Okay, so right now, that's what we're going to be talking about now. C is done. We're on A. Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator,
Yep.
Jim Wright, Rockwood Lane.
Close to the mic, please. Thank you.
My understanding is that our police chief was recommending a modified version of 8A.
Right.
Which is no to retail and then mod east only for the other 4 options. And I'm interested in whether the town would like to consider that.
Okay, yes, that is correct, and in order for that to happen, somebody needs to make an amendment. So, Chief?
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to amend the motion to remove the west from manufacturing and from laboratories.
So, you want to remove this west here, manufacturing, correct?
Correct.
And you want to remove west laboratories?
Correct.
Correct. So if someone could get that to me in writing, I know it's easy, but I need it in writing so I can give it to the town clerk if we vote on it. You got it written down? Okay, manufacturing laboratories, okay. So it would be just east. So essentially, does that mean west is totally eliminated? That's what it means. West would be totally eliminated from the picture. So if you could put the picture back up real quick, Sandra. It means this stays as is, this goes away completely. That's what the amendment says. Everybody understand that?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Yes.
Can I just make a request on the motion? Can you just add to it? Mr. Moderator, if I could just make a recommendation about the form of the motion. Can we just add to it to make changes to the text and to authorize the town clerk to make ministerial changes as needed to make the numbering appropriate? And you could just say so moved.
I agree with that.
So moved, thank you. Okay, so that's just one of those technicality things we don't want to get stuck on later on. So there has been a second. So now what we're going to talk about is the amendment. Taking out the West District, okay? Not all the other stuff we talked about a half hour ago, because we've already talked about that. So we're just going to talk about removing the West District. Yes, sir. You're next.
Sorry, Brad Phillips, 11 Christian Hill. I had a question, but it was not about what you just said we needed to
So why don't you
talk
just wait then, okay? Because that's what we want to talk about now, is removing the west section. Is that what you want to talk about, sir?
Yes. Craig Wine, Post 80 East Pine Road.
Yeah.
I'd like to request that we have a stand-up vote for this. I think just having people screaming like Vikings in the middle of the room is just ridiculous. So can we have like an accurate vote? And this is another example of why we need electronic voting.
Well, you know, let's not go there. But what I will say is this. This is how it works, okay? So it's worked this way for hundreds of years, okay?
Yeah, but it's not.
No, stop. Let me explain how it works. We have a voice vote. If I can't make the call on the voice vote, we have a standing vote. If people don't agree with how I called it, 7 people can stand up and say, Mr. Moderator, I don't agree with you. We should have a standing vote. That's been in place forever. Okay? So, if hypothetically, 10 minutes ago, somebody wasn't happy with how I called it, somebody could have said, Mr. Moderator, I challenge that and I want to have a standing vote. We could have had a standing vote if 7 people agreed to that. So, with all due respect, it's not like we're Vikings, okay, sir? We've been doing it, don't stop. We've been doing this a long time. And we're not going to get into other things which we could deal with later. I have no problem with that discussion. So, if though you wanted to do something else, you can recommend something else in terms of how we do the vote. Okay? So, just make your comments, but don't do the commentary, sir. Go ahead.
Just for clarification, so we would vote first and then we would raise our hand to see if we wanted a standing vote? Is that how it works?
This is how it happens. We have a voice vote. I make the call. If it's clear to me what the call is, I'll make that call because it's clear and there's no question about it. Even then, if 7 people wanted to challenge me, I guess they could. Then what would happen is we'd be spending 10 to 15 minutes having a vote that says 120 to like 20, and you'd get a lot of people upset. But if anybody thinks it's really close, that's fine. Keep in mind, there was not a 2/3 majority vote before, okay? Having said that, we'll see how the process goes, okay? So right now, what we have is the amendment to remove the west section. And that, thank you very much, Madam Town Clerk. That only requires a majority vote because that is an amendment. So that's different than the other one, which requires 2/3. So what I'd like to have now is discussion about whether we should do that amendment or not. So,
As we kind of moderator.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Diane Tierney, 51 Milford Street. I just have a question. Does anybody have a number of the retail establishments that would be allowed total in town? I live on Milford Street, so does that mean if we get rid of one section, we're going to allow them all to come to, how, is there a number? I know the state limits it, but
Right.
will we?
So is your question for the whole town or just for west and east?
Yeah, for the whole town, I'd like to know, is there a number?
Do folks understand the question?
Just so you know,
Mr.
on
Lieutenant?
this particular article, and even with the amendment, retail is still prohibited. So if you look back, if you go back to the chart.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Under this particular article, it would still be prohibited.
Okay,
Can you
what
put the
about
chart back up there again, please?
Now the question then becomes as far as whether or not laboratory testing,
No limits.
there would be no limits.
No limits, so there could be 100 on Milford.
Kind of like used car dealerships.
Okay.
See, I knew something was gonna come back on that one. Okay.
They seem to be plentiful.
Sandra, if you could do me a favor, please put the chart back up there.
But as well, it would be subject to special permit.
Okay.
As what was discussed earlier.
Is-
Planning board.
Just before we get to the next question, is there a limit on the retail?
There is no.
Could you do the
No
chart?
limit.
No.
No retail.
Whoa, wait, everybody, relax,
I
relax. There's a
understand
question.
we're not voting on retail right now, but if we get to B, is there a limit on retail establishments?
Well, if we get to B, then, we'll deal with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe I can clarify or answer a question. Through town council, I believe there was a limit of 20% of the liquor licenses in town. I don't know if that applies to all of retail or not.
Mr. Moderator, through
Yes.
you. The limitation on the number of retail licenses is a town may, without a ballot question that voted yes at the state election,
Right.
impose a limit of no less than 20% of the number of retail licenses available. So what that would mean is you would not need a ballot question if you were going to do 20% or more
Oh, I see.
allowed.
Okay, fine, got it. Okay. So again, this is removing West from the picture. That's still what we're talking about. That's still what we're going to be voting on in a few minutes. Any other discussion about that? Mr. Roach.
This is going to require a
Also.
ballot question also, right?
Oh, yeah, this will require a ballot question. Well, no, not the amendment. Not the amendment, no.
Well, it's not saying it's taking the ballot question out of it.
Okay, listen, we still have the ballot question. That has to happen if we vote for A.
Okay.
That has to happen still, even if we vote this amendment on. Yes.
Wendy Cox,
Sir.
College Drive. The chief had suggested taking out the west.
Right.
Is there a way to add an amendment, or, I don't know, a modification to his, taking manufacturing and agriculture off completely?
Removing it from east and west? I mean, you know what? Let's deal with this first, okay? Because when you do amendments to amendments, I mean, it's complicated enough as it is right now.
Yeah, I just didn't know how that works.
Well, okay, this is how it works. We vote on this, see where we are, and then we go from there.
All right.
Okay, so, good. All right. Sir?
Sorry.
It's all right.
I know on 8A you have no retail.
Correct.
Now on 8B you have the east. All right?
But, yeah.
Now, if you were thinking of having retail, you could probably amend manufacturing and laboratories and take out the west of both of those. And then you'd have east across the board.
But we're not on B right now, we're still on A.
I know. Well, if you vote on A and that passes, then you're never going to make it to B.
That's the likelihood, but we don't know that for sure. That's probably what's going to happen. But that's a fair point. Now I understand your point.
You're never going to get to B if you
Then
vote on A.
you have to vote on how you feel on that. Yeah. Right now, we're still talking about the amendment to remove West.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
No, that's a fair point, yeah. Yes, sir.
Jim Floyd, 10 Henry's Path. I call the question on the amendment,
Okay,
please.
thank you. Calling the question means you've heard enough about the amendment. I hope that's the case. So, if 2/3 of you say you've heard enough about the amendment, we're going to vote on the amendment. So all those in favor of calling the question signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries by 2/3. So, now we're going to vote on the amendment. The amendment is to remove West from 8A in both manufacturing and laboratories. No more discussion. We're going to vote on it. This only requires a majority vote. All those in favor of removing West for those two sections, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The motion carries by a majority. So, where we are right now is this. We're looking at 8A as amended. Okay? No. Mod East across the board. So the ballot question. Now we go to the questions about the motion as amended. Yes, sir.
Brett Phyllis, 11 Christian Hill. 2 questions.
Yep.
I see here these specific industries called out. While there are some specific industries called out by the state, such as cultivation specifically, the question would be how would that fit into what we see here?
Okay, good. Cultivation, where does that come under? Does that come under manufacturing? Or?
So I believe it's specifically called.
I'm asking the question myself. Yeah, that's a good question. Where does it come under?
We have it listed as agriculture.
Okay, cultivation comes under agriculture.
And are we specifying between 5,000 or 1 million square foot facilities?
What are the laws with regard to the size of the facilities? Anything? Madam Town Council?
Whatever the underlying zoning is in that
Oh,
particular.
there you go. That's the answer, right. So, yeah, whatever the zoning is, that's it.
Final question, or can you please reiterate the maximum tax in each of these brackets that the town can receive?
I don't know. I don't know if you.
It's more of a leading question.
Yeah,
The
it is.
maximum tax would be 3%.
And that is in which one of these industries, or all of them?
It would be for retail.
So just to clarify, we don't get any tax revenue for any of the other industries.
Mr. Moderator, if I could. The town does, there will be tax revenue if these facilities are not on the rolls now and come back into the rolls.
Okay.
There's also a sales tax and other taxes paid to the state, and the town will get a portion of that.
Okay,
But
fine.
It's
Right.
the direct sales tax is on the retail part.
So, all right. Okay, good. There's no hands up. This is good. So what we're going to vote on now, 8A, with the amendment, requires 2/3 majority vote. Okay? Everyone got that? All right.
Wait, Mr. Moderator, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Madam Town Council?
I forgot to mention something when I responded to the last question, and that is, in addition to all these other things we've been talking about, there has to be a host community agreement between any marijuana establishment and the town. And that host community agreement can provide for host community benefits, and that's the 3% the manager was talking
Okay.
about. So that's actual cost to the town of up to 3%. For retail, it's an additional 3% that's actually a local option for the town, and then there's the state.
Great. Okay. I know it's been a long discussion, and hopefully you know more now than you did 45 minutes ago, and that now you're ready to vote on this. Mr. Burnett, do you have another comment or not?
Yeah.
Please make it brief.
Like many of these other, all of these different uses would have a host community. I mean, I think the town would absolutely insist on that.
Right.
So the question whether retail or other, I think the maximum host community fee is 3%, correct? Every place I know of is imposing the maximum 3%. So whether it's retail or these other applications, the value, whatever the value is, the town would generate, I think, combined up to 6%.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we're ready to vote. So, all those in favor of Article A with the amendment to remove the west section, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
No.
The motion carries by a 2/3 majority. Is there another motion? Please.
Make a motion to pass over Article B.
Mr. Moderator, I make a motion to pass over Articles B and D.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to pass over Articles B and D. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries by unanimous decision. So, there will be a ballot question at the annual election. Good, thank you. Article 9.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to accept
provisions under Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5N, titled Reduction of Property Tax Obligations of Veterans in Exchange for Volunteer Service, for the purpose of establishing a Veterans Tax Work-Off Program.
Moved and seconded. Oh, thank you. The Veterans Work-Off Program, similar to what we have now with the seniors. Any discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Article 10.
I move that the town vote to amend Title II, Chapter 14, street numbering of the general bylaws by inserting the underlined and deleting the strike through as set forth in Article 10 of the 2018 special town meeting. We have a...
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there planning board recommendation on this at all or not? No? Okay. So this is street numbering and naming. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Article 11.
Don Spargo, Historical Commission, 57 Hartford Avenue North. I move that the town vote to amend Title 8 of the General Bylaws, Preservation of Historically Significant Buildings, as set forth in the handout entitled November 13, 2018 Special Town Meeting Amendments to Title 8, Preservation of Historically Significant Buildings.
Okay, second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Is there a FinCom recommendation on this? No. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Motion carries by majority. Article 12. Revolving funds question.
Article 12. I move that the town vote to amend Title II, Chapter 25 of the General Bylaws, revolving funds, by inserting a new Section 9 as set forth in Article 12 of the 2018 Special Town Meeting warrant.
Second.
Okay, and it's what is stated there about all entities authorizing, et cetera, et cetera? Is that correct? Okay, let me read it so that everyone knows what it is. Section 9, all entities authorized to expend revolving funds under this bylaw shall, during the annual budget process and upon such schedule as shall be determined by the town manager, prepare a detailed proposed budget to be submitted to the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee outlining all line item operating and capital expenses of the upcoming fiscal year to include previous year's revenues and projected future revenues. That's what we're voting on. Okay? Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried by a majority. 13. Personnel bylaw change.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator.
Good evening.
Nate Fisher, One Driscoll Lane. Article 13 reads, I move that the town vote to amend the personnel bylaw as set forth out in the handout entitled November 13, 2018 Special Town Meeting Consolidated Personnel Bylaw 2018.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. Mr. Taylor?
Bill Taylor, 211 North Street. I believe this article will take the former control that the town meeting had over the personnel bylaw and shift it to more of an administrative process, which I'm probably okay with. But one question I do have is, to the extent that the residents of the town will still have some control over personnel bylaw and personnel decisions, what input can the public have on those decisions? Okay. Anybody want to address that?
Thank you for your question. So we, in the Personnel Committee,
determined that there's enough changes that are going on in the state that's out there that in human resources law that required much more than the ability to only be able to change the bylaws to keep up, to make sure that the town was in compliance with laws more than 2 times a year. So to make sure that control is still somewhat in the town people's hands, no personnel policy changes can be made by the Board of Selectmen without them first coming from the Personnel Committee. And then the Personnel Committee has to have notice of a town meeting, if you will, with 2 weeks' notice and published in the specific things, kind of an open meeting that we have to have so that anyone who has any comments, questions, or concerns in regards to those documents can come to that meeting to voice their opinion. And then the Personnel Board will then make the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. At that time, the Board of Selectmen will also have their meeting, although not necessarily in an open meeting format with 2 weeks' notice, but in one of their meetings, and then that change has to be then also approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, so there is a meeting then, if any changes get made, but not the quote town meeting like we have now.
Correct, yeah. It's just there's too many things that happen in regards to the human resources law that have to be done more quickly that we discovered over the last year.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? It's good to have that question because I'm sure a lot of people did not understand what this is really asking. So, more questions?
I don't live in Upton any longer, but I was here for 5 years. Could I just ask a question regarding this?
All righty. If it's a benign question, yes, please, because,
The question I have is when you're striking certain things from the bylaws, like conflict of interest and harassment training that had taken place, I believe, by Copeland and Page, is that somewhere included?
well, the personnel bylaw can address that. Could you address that particular issue?
So all of the items that, that were originally in the personnel bylaw are now in the personnel processes and procedures manual. So if you, I don't believe that it's in here, but the documentation would be on the October 16th meeting of the Board of Selectmen. So anyone who has any questions or concerns in regards to any of that documentation, that information, oh, and then it's also on the website under the Human Resources Guide that's there. So that Personnel and Policy Procedure Manual is by law required to be posted on the website. In addition to that, obviously, that text of the Board of Selectmen approving said, documentation was in the October 16th meeting. So, so if anyone has any questions about it, they can take a look at it.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion on it?
If I could as well, things like conflict of interest law are addressed by state law. They don't need to be reviewed in policies.
Thank you.
It is there, however.
Dan Lazaris, 10 Farr Road. I was the co-chair of TME last year. I rise in support of this change because, as it's been brought forward, this was a big part of what we had identified in our work.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? Motion carries by majority. Article 14.
Hi, Megan. So Article 14 reads, I move that the town vote to amend Title II, Chapter 2 of the General Bylaw by inserting a new Section 2A entitled Compensation of Elected Officials as set forth in Article 14 of the 2018 Special Town Meeting warrant.
Okay, moved and seconded. Essentially, this is saying that stipendary positions of multiple meeting bodies, the chairman gets $750 and everyone else gets $500, right?
So if I may.
Please, yeah.
All right, so just as an explanation of this for everyone, one of the items that we saw in the personnel bylaw, so the personnel bylaw used to be an extension of the bylaws of the town of Upton. Because we've now removed that section, we primarily proceeded with making most of that as a policy and procedure manual. The personnel board decided that it was probably best to move the stipend section back into the general bylaws as is what is seen in other towns and committees.
So this is the same thing that already exists, it's just moving it somewhere else.
Yes, we've just moved this item to the bylaws. So therefore, for any of you who had questions or concerns in regards to that, those items in regards to stipends for members who are on paid committees would still have to go to town meeting to alter the amount that they would be paid.
Okay, thank you, because it seemed like it was the same thing that's been happening the past 4 or 5 years, and it is, okay. Great, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. 15's gone, 16.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $12,500 for new design options for an upgraded public works facility, including all expenses incidental and related.
Second.
Moved and seconded. FinCom recommendation?
Favorable action, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay. Article 16, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries by majority. Article 17 is not here. 18.
Don Spargo, Technology Commission. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $40,000 for the purpose of providing information technology support services related to security, support, and maintenance of the town's computers, servers, website, email, or related IT infrastructure, including all expenses incidental and related.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. FinCom recommendation?
Favorable action, Mr. Moderator.
Favorable action by the FinCom. Any discussion? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if I'm reading this right or not, but I think it says in the narrative, 40,500. But in parentheses, it just says the 40,000.
Oh, you're right. Look at that. It does say 40,500 in the letters. It's 40,000. The motion is 40,000. No problem. Thank you, Dr. West, for figuring. Boy, sharp eyes you got there. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries by majority. 19 and 20 have been withdrawn. 21. I got a motion for 21.
Kelly McKellar, 13 Trust Street. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 to purchase the upgrade software for the Assessor Pro, including all expenses incidental and related.
Moved and seconded. FinCom recommendation?
Favorable action.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. 22 and 3 are gone. 24.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the General Court to amend Section 3 and 4 of Chapter 391 of the Acts of 2008 entitled An Act Establishing the Office of Town Manager in the Town of Upton, as set forth in Article 24 of 2018 Special Town Meeting warrant, with the strike-through text to be deleted and underlined text to be inserted, provided, however, that the General Court may make clerical or editorial changes of form only to the bill unless the Board of Selectmen approve amendments to the bill before enacted by the General Court, and provided further that the Board of Selectmen is hereby authorized to approve the amendment which shall be within the scope of the general public's objections to this petition.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All that. So Article 24. Okay. Is there a FinCom recommendation? No. Okay. Any discussion? Yes.
Ann Petrisky, 250 Milton Street. It's just, I guess, for clarification, so why is some of this not with the personnel board? Somewhere down here it says, Town manager the board with respect to employee discipline, providing the disciplinary action shall be taken by the town manager. How come that isn't part of the personnel board. I don't understand.
That's a good, I don't know, I mean, that's a fair question. Go ahead, Tom.
So
Town manager.
when the special act was enacted in 2008, they added language in there for disciplinary action. It's the law, it's the special act that they follow.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Ma'am?
Donna Marie Floyd, 10 Hemmings Ave. Who submitted this and what's the reasoning for this submission?
Do you want to be specific or like something specific or just in general?
Basically the board of selectmen submitted it. We just felt that sometimes with the increase, which one would you like me to talk about first, the 3 to 5 years or the disciplinary language?
The 3 to 5 years.
We just felt that once in a while, if you have a good town manager, you want to have consistency. In with the market right now, there's a lot of job openings, so we want to have the options if we were happy with the job that the town manager is doing, offer him a longer contract. Nothing says we're going to offer him in 3 years, but just to give us another option.
Okay.
I would just, as part of the town manager review committee in 2017, we looked at this, and while this is no reflection on the current town manager, by doing a 3-year, it's pretty standard among a lot of the towns reviewed. Same with superintendents, 3 years is pretty standard. And we're sort of protecting ourselves if after 3 years something goes wrong. So, processes and procedures are in place in order to have reviews. And again, while we might, be in love right now, maybe year 4 things go down and then we're kind of stuck. So, and again, we did really look at this thoroughly. I would recommend that we don't pass it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay.
Jim Floyd, 10 Hemmings Path. Could we vote on these 2 sections separately? Or are they tied together? I'm not sure. There's so much language here. I feel like I'm going to have a quiz later.
That's a very fair question. Town council, can these be separated out, or are they really 2 tied together? I don't understand the legal aspect
They're
of
not
it.
tied together.
Mr. Moderator, as long as you're comfortable with that, I think they're divisible, they're not tied to one another, but I would point out, just in response to the previous speaker, that section number 1 is an authorization, not a mandate, and I know that that was also mentioned. In my experience, it's more and more frequent that that type of provision up to 5 years is being allowed, and it would be under state law without this anyway. So anyhow, I just wanted to make sure to provide that background information.
So it could be divided, but you'd have to make a motion to do it. We'd have to talk about whether we should or shouldn't. We'd have to vote on that and then see how it goes.
As I look at it, I'll withdraw the motion on that.
Okay.
And I'll just say the final thing. I understand the rationale behind having the ability to extend from 3 years to 5 years, but, and again, as my wife said previously, I think the current town manager not only is taking the town in a fantastic direction, and I can't imagine that we would go through a search and find somebody better than this. I still think the best way to do it is to stay with the 3 years and make sure that we treat the town manager with the kind of respect and provide him with a working situation whereby he wants to stay, while at the same time he's able to continue to do the great job he's doing right now and is so inclined to stay as well.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Question.
Yeah.
Can I just stand here and shout real loud?
Please, come to the mic. Thank you. We don't want to be accused of being whatever, so.
I guess my question on that issue is, I assume that whether it's a 3 or a 5-year contract, if the town manager were to do something that torqued everyone off or was illegal or whatever, that there are provisions to remove him from office and, cancel the contract, basically. I assume this is an employment contract, so there's already got to be a mechanism that if he's not doing his or her job, or does something that brings disreputation to the town, that he can be fired.
I think the word is cause, right? Is that the right word?
Mr. Moderator, yes, and those are the types of things, especially if you are going to do a longer contract, that we would look at carefully before entering into a longer contract.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, so, all those in favor of the Article 24, with respect to changing of the town manager situation, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. Ooh, I know. All right. See, what happens sometimes is town meetings go on, people get kind of lazy about how they vote on things. So we'll try it once more by voice, and if there's any doubt, we will then count. So, let me know how you feel about this. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. You're going to have to stand. That's okay. Someone asked that earlier, so we're going to do that. All right. So, there's a few folks who have helped me in the past with counting. If you're there, come forward, please. I need as many of you as I can get. So I just have two. We got Denise. We have anybody else who's helped me in the past here? Denise. Okay. You know what? I think we're all set there. We got 4 here. Thank you. All we need is 4. You can get those. Yeah. Okay. 4 is fine. I need to ask that everybody be in a chair. If you are a voter in the 2 little sections, you need to be in the bigger sections. If you're in this section and you can't vote, then you need to move the other sections or just sit down both times. Because if you're not a voter, you can't vote here. Okay? So, all those in favor, please stand. Four counters all set? And all of you agree with, okay, great. Everyone sit down. All those opposed, please rise. So here's the vote. Yes, 61, no, 54. The vote passes by a majority. So, next is Article 25.
Bill Taylor and North Street. I move the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 for preparation of conceptual design for a municipal community center to consist of a public library, senior center, and possibly other municipal services, as well as renderings for a short-term and long-term phased downtown revitalization plan, including all expenses incidental and related.
Okay. Second, moved and seconded. FinCom recommendation?
Favorable action.
Capital Budget Committee recommendation?
Favorable action.
Thank you, sir. After an hour and a half, I remembered. Okay. So, any discussion on this? Sir?
Rick Rankins, 35 Close Street. I have two concerns about it. One's $50,000 drawings of the top of the building.
Come close to the microphone, sir.
Properties downtown are all pretty uniquely designed, so any general building is probably going to have to be redesigned when you find out which property is going on. The second one is the renderings for a conceptual plan for the whole downtown. And as soon as we get done voting on this, we're going to vote to try to sell off the properties that the town already owns down there. So I think we should, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Okay. Yep. Anybody want to comment on that? Or?
Yeah, certainly. So the Board of Selectmen appointed a joint feasibility.
This looks upside down, pardon me. This is upside down, I think. The map's upside down. Sorry, I didn't. Go ahead. I'm trying to read it and I can't, so.
Okay, so the Board of Selectmen a few months ago appointed a joint feasibility committee made up of folks from the Council of Aging, the library trustees, and 3 staff members, both all working at the Senior Center, Library, and Town Hall. Their charge is to come up with conceptual designs of a joint building that would be sited on a parcel downtown. This building would consist of the Senior Center and library services, in, if we have the ability, additional municipal services as well. So there's been many years of discussion of trying to bring a new library to town. And so this is what we think is kind of the next step in that progress to try to make that come to fruition. So before we can go to schematic design, we need to have conceptual designs that we can get behind and then appropriate design build money. So 40,000 of the 50,000 will go towards a conceptual design. The additional $10,000 will go towards constructing a vision for the downtown area. So this map in front of you, which I guess it is backwards, maybe that's where it's being projected. This was designed in 2010. And so we are working very closely with the Economic Development Committee, the Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, and many other committees to try to reimagine what our downtown center can look like. So as you can see here, this was done in 2010, and some of the ideas that are discussed today are still holding true today. But again, some of these things are no longer necessary. So this is an example of what we're trying to accomplish in the downtown area. A walkable community made up of mixed-use development, of retail, commercial, residential space, with a mixed-use municipal building, laying on top of many other amenities, such as walking trails, connecting to Heritage Park, a potential enhanced town common, green space, so our children can come to for decades to come. So that's the intent behind the article, and we are looking forward to working with developers to make this come to fruition.
Thank you. Any other, Sir Connecticut?
I don't have an issue with the building itself, the library or anything. It just doesn't say any piece of property used down there is going to have to be redesigned again later, and because the plans aren't going to fit if you don't know what you need for parking and what shape the building will be in. So it seems like you put money out there, but it's being wasted money unless you know exactly where the land, what piece of property is going to be put on.
The conceptual design, I'm sorry, Ellen Arnold, 54 Ridge Road. The conceptual design was 2010, and I believe that, I'm sorry, I've been out of touch for a while, so if I'm wrong, excuse me, but I believe that I haven't heard of any public forum since then or recently to discuss this, and some of the things that concern me is I see public library, senior center, and other municipal services. But there is the Historical Society inside the Milton Rustine building, and looking at the other two articles, it appears that building might be lost, and if that's the case, the service provided by the Society through the use of the Historical Commission room, which is a town body, what happens to them, and would you commit now that, you know, in the process of doing this conceptual design, that there would be multiple public forums?
Okay. Yeah, so I can speak to some of the Joint Feasibility Committee. All the meetings are public. They've met on at least 3 or 4 occasions already. They're having these discussions on what size facility they need, potential parcels in the downtown area that they fit that type of facility on, and what services they can fit within that building. And then certainly the Economic Development Committee, the Historical Commission, the Conservation Commission, they're all going to have a voice in, again, redesigning what this is going to look like. So, you know, I would encourage all folks to go to our website. We list all of our meetings publicly, and you're going to start to see, assuming these articles pass, you're going to start to see more of these meetings take place, because we'll have the tools that are necessary to go ahead and start to develop this downtown area.
Okay.
Beyond the individual meetings, and some people, including myself, are guilty of not going to some meetings, but for example, in the marijuana discussion, you had a couple of public forums, I believe, well publicized. Will you commit to holding such a public forum if we expend this money to help develop this conceptual design?
I will make that personal commitment, yes, absolutely.
Ma'am?
Kathy Taylor, 14 Plain Street. We talked about doing the library and the senior center together before. My understanding is if you have a library separate, there's a lot of state funding that kicks in. So I'm concerned that we are losing all of our state funding for a separate library. Secondly, there is a historical district downtown. And I've noted that towns that have two things, an historical component to the town and open space. Those are the towns that do well and their real estate properties also go up in value. So I just have great concern with half of the town center. The word is disposed from the next two articles, and I would just urge the town to consider the village aspect of having we keep losing buildings, and I would urge that the historical aspect of keeping the buildings intact be considered.
Thank you.
Gene Burnett, 228 Mendon Street, Chair of the Economic Development Commission. I think you have to look at this as step one. This particular article is step one in a number of different articles, and it's sequential for a reason. The overall process that we're talking about is a complete revisioning of the downtown area, which is sorely in need of both maintenance and modernization. So in order to get from point A to point B, a lot of things are going to happen. And among those is this preliminary work. The preliminary work of conceptualizing a design involves broad public involvement. There'll be design charrettes. There'll be polls that will be taken within the community to determine what's important to you, what's not. What's envisioned is a totally communally involved process which helps define what's the ultimate potential. So we're looking at a grand design in conclusion from which we can form the intricate pieces, the individual pieces, and cobble them together in a phased approach or in a whole comprehensive approach. In order to do that, the selectmen are going to have certain authorities. They're going to have to be able to go out and engage with credible developers, not small regional developers. We're talking about a major downtown redevelopment that could attract national developers that specialize in this kind of work, that really can change the community for the good for another century to come. You look at the town of Grafton's Town Common, you look at other places where there has been some vision applied. This is the process that we will need to go through. It will be disciplined, it will be very open, and it will engage as many people as want to be engaged. We will also engage design professionals. We're hoping from the major design schools in the area to help us with this vision. So it'll be new ideas being thrown out there for you to consider. We're not going to be coming up with the ideas ourselves. That's not the point of this. We have, we all have our work to do each day. We need inspiration from other places. You get to comment on that inspiration and help guide it. But again, as I said, this is step one in a multi-step process of which we'll be dealing with in the next few minutes. But keep in mind, the downtown is sorely lacking in any kind of planning. We have a traffic situation that's completely untenable that needs to be resolved. That's phase one, in a way, of all of this. And we have adjoining properties to the existing town properties that won't stay available to us forever. So time is of the essence. This isn't something we can put off for a year, 2 years, or 3 years. It really needs to be done in the next 6 months to 9 months.
That's okay.
Ann Madrisky, 250 Milford Street. With all respect to the previous speaker, part of me doesn't see any reason for revitalizing the downtown. We're a historic New England town. Now, having said that, I'm obviously, or you may not know, obviously in favor of a new public library and a senior center. And yes, there is a traffic problem. But I'm not sure why we don't discuss those separately. And based on what I read in the town crier, I probably need the moderator's advice. I mean, I'm not sure what to address at this question. I mean, this is setting everything in motion. And I guess I'd feel more comfortable separating out the public library and senior center from everything else. Just because I don't think it's necessary, there might not be other people. The other question I've got, which might be out of order here, is according to the town crier, you want to sell Riston and the Old Holy Angels in order to support this. And so I'm wondering what's the contingency plan for a library in the interim? Because it sounds like you're going to
Yeah.
sell Riston in order to build a new library.
Right now, this isn't dealing with that,
Okay.
although it is indirectly related to it, so that's why I'm allowing some discussion about that. Okay? So right now, this is 25 that we're looking at, and not 6 or 7, which will come up later.
Okay, but I guess my problem is it's related.
Sure, it is absolutely related, which is why I'm allowing some
And I know
discussion.
you're in a hurry to sell the buildings, which is a concern, but something this big, we're going to change the whole downtown. Might be better put off till the annual meeting.
Okay, no, fair point. The board wanted to say something regarding that?
Ma'am, we have no intentions on doing anything to the library until something's finalized and a building is built.
All right, I'm Greg Manning, 49 East. I am the chair of the feasibility study group. I'm also on the Council on Aging. The library has a major issues for access from the disabled. You can't get into the place. Secondly, the senior center is in a building that is not owned by the city, and
Town. Thank you.
and it could go
Big difference.
anytime. I know, I'm new.
That's right, that's okay.
And we have looked at this. There is a piece of land we were looking at. We have the library and the senior center both have issues that they want to see. It's not inventing the wheel to put the senior center, basically the community center, with a library. It's been done in the past, and excellent results. This community is also aging. I know that's a shock to some of you, but it is. There's a lot more seniors, and their numbers are increasing, and we would like to see a better senior center, because the current one is not considered a senior center. And because of all of that, this is a plan, this is a portion of the plan, and the drawing you saw there is but basically the same thing. We're not destroying the downtown. This is a historic downtown, but it isn't the intent to build this building and, level the place. It's a library, and the library, the next issue is the library, but they're not going to be selling it because part of the sale is in conjunction with this entire redevelopment process. It's all one thing. This is just one element. And the library being sold, I had the same issue with the senior center, because the people said, well, if we close, no, you're going to build this. It's not going to be built tomorrow, either the library or the senior center here, and people will be dealing with this, and this will take a couple of years, but it's a good thing.
Thank you. So keep in mind, this is just looking at Article 25.
Lynn Haggerty, 10 Sardina Lane. I'm just trying to figure out why we're going for such a big scale conceptual plan instead of concentrating on actual engineering drawings for one community center. And I guess it's two-part. We have 9 years left before we need to do something about the senior center. Why aren't we just concentrating on the one thing, the library? We need to do something about the library now. Why aren't we breaking this up and spending the money on actual engineering drawings for the parcel of land?
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Moderator.
Sure.
So the intent of this is very much to break up all of this work into different phases. The reason that we're looking at a redesign of a conceptual drawing, essentially, of the entire downtown area is precisely so that we can divide up and prioritize different phases of the work. So the initial phase of the work is we're focused on the library, because that's something that we've been trying to do for 20 years and people are interested in that. Same thing with the Council on Aging. It's an opportunity to consolidate those two things. We also have Holy Angels Church, which is coming up later. We have the Ristine building. We have the parking lot. We have the land that's there that's available. And so, to Mr. Burnat's point, the opportunity is for us to have a plan that goes across the whole downtown area. We essentially, as a community, have the opportunity to decide what it is we want our downtown area to look like over the next 10, 20, 30 years. So this is just an initial drawing so that people can understand what it is we're trying to do as a town, right? This is your town, it's your town common. It's only gonna be what folks want it to be. It's not gonna be something somebody else decides. But this gives us an overlay to say, hey, here are all the possibilities. Now, in order to do this, we need to do something with the church. We need to do something with the parking lot. We need to do something with the Racine building. But those will all be separate conversations. We're certainly not gonna do all of this in one fell swoop. It just can't happen that way. We're never gonna be without a library. We're not gonna close the existing library before we open a new library. Same thing with the Council on Aging, same thing with having accommodation for the Historical Commission. This is gonna be a very open, community-based process for all of these things, but we wanted to start with a big plan so that we could phase out and prioritize the work that we wanted to do over the next 10 or 20 years.
Hi there, Sadie Van Buren, 113 Mendon Street. Couple of questions about how this plan is developed. So, number one, has the town already chosen a vendor to deliver these designs?
Has they chosen a vendor for the design? No.
Okay, given that not, how does that process happen? Like, how would you open the process for bidding? And maybe that's something that everybody already knows and I just don't.
Mr. Brindisi? So, are you referring to the 10,000 conceptual design vendor? Which vendor are you referring to?
Yeah, there'd be some vendor that's preparing these designs.
For the conceptual building or the downtown?
The downtown redesign, I guess.
The downtown redesign is slated at approximately $10,000, and so procurement law just requires us to go ahead and get three quotes.
Okay, so then, I'm sorry, then the $40,000 is not to cover that design?
The $40,000 is to conduct conceptual designs of the joint building between the library, senior center, and potentially other municipal services.
Okay, so there's the whole mixed reuse area, and then there's the specific building or buildings for the municipal.
Okay, is that right?
Those two things?
So, right, this is all subject to procurement.
Okay, and for the mixed reuse downtown redesign plan, is it the town's intention to reduce one plan to submit to the town, or would there be multiple options that the townspeople could vote on?
Again, this is just the beginning. I think it was stated earlier that this is going to be a public open process. I'm sure it'll go through many iterations until we land on one design that the community is satisfied with.
Okay.
And if I may, and what we were thinking about initially, is it's a great point, is thinking of coming up with one plan with multiple phases within that plan, but you raise a great point, and that's why we'll have the public discussion about it, is we should look at alternatives as well, because it doesn't have to be one plan. Part of the creation of it, we'll create this initial vision of what it could look like, and then go to the community and have the open forums, have the other meetings that we publicize, to get people's input to say, you know what, we don't need as much of a town common, we want a little more park space, or we don't want the stores, we want residential, or whatever that may be.
Okay, ma'am?
Yeah, just one more question. So in part of this planning, when we think about the redesign of the town, right, not the specific municipal building, but the town itself, I know there's a lot of pain that people have brought up that need to be addressed around traffic and things like that, but in terms of redeveloping, is there any kind of return on investment calculation that's being done to show what the town would get from this as part of this planning process?
Yeah, I actually have that ROI on a future slide. I'll talk about it now since you asked the question. We looked at the 4 parcels from Holy Angels Church down to running alongside Milford Street down to Grove. Once you hit the brook, those 4 parcels, go ahead, keep going.
The financial.
Yeah, can you show the map real quick so I can show which parcels we're referring to?
Back.
Yeah, I think so. Back too. Yeah, keep going. Right there. So you can see, so again, the red circle, trying to draw your attention. Those 4 parcels right there represent approximately $7,000 in annual taxes. Today. The goal is to knit those 4 parcels together to create a downtown mixed-use project made up of residential, commercial, and retail space. The math on a $4 million valuation would yield approximately $70,000 in annual tax returns.
Hi, Maureen Byrne, 158 Westboro Road. I have a question about the municipal building, the library, et cetera. Do we have a site picked out? I don't know how we're designing a building if we don't have a site picked out.
There are multiple sites in the downtown area that we're currently looking at and potentially talking to landowners for acquisition.
Okay, could I make a motion to separate the price on, you know, the conceptual design of the downtown versus the municipal building?
This particular article,
I'm wondering why they're written together.
well, it is one article. My sense is that they're trying to put a plan for the whole downtown. So as you look at it here, to try to separate these things out individually, I don't know how we could do it logistically.
Because I just don't know how we can, it seems like we should be doing the concept for the downtown first, and then doing the plan, you know, the concept for the joint building after.
I'm not
It's
sure
kind of
if
like
that's-
the cart before the horse.
I'm not sure.
No,
Go ahead.
absolutely, and I think the only thing I would say is that we've prioritized, so this downtown plan will consist of multiple phases. The first phase is that library council on aging, because we believe that that's the highest priority based on the lack of accessibility.
Yeah, I just
for
don't
the
know how
town
we can
library.
do that if we don't know where it's going.
Yeah, I mean, they can, so my understanding is, and you guys can
So is the
jump in.
concept that we're going to put it downtown?
Hold it, we can't have two people talking at once.
Okay.
You've asked a question, he's trying to answer it, so try to answer it.
Yeah, so the design, the conceptual design of the building, right, this isn't an architectural design, this isn't specs, this isn't floor boards and, you know, all of that, right? This is how much square foot do you need? We worked with the feasibility committee to say, how many square feet do you need? What could a building look like? How many floors would we need to have? How would we have it broken up? What kind of a parcel could it fit on? We know, we just pointed out there's 4 parcels there. So we may know by the time we get the contract, we may have a clearer sense of which of those parcels we could target. We could also say to them, assume we're going to use this parcel and design it for that. So there's a couple of options to work with the vendor. to
Okay,
do that.
so I guess my question is, it's going to be in this downtown concept, not in a wholly different location?
Absolutely.
Somewhere in town, okay,
Yeah,
that's what I was...
it'll be in the design of this downtown
Okay, that's what I
area.
didn't understand,
I'm
was
sorry,
was
that's a
part
great-
of the...
Yeah, absolutely. The first phase of this would be doing redoing the road, the traffic intersection, as well as the library council on aging.
Yeah, that's what I didn't understand, I thought it was being there.
No, good clarification.
Dan Lazaris, 10 Farr Road. The last conversation did help answer a few questions. I think there's a lot of confusion about planning downtown versus a building. Is this an intent to have Central Mass Planning continue to work downtown as a separate task, and then this $50,000 just pay for a architectural, engineering, and planning firm to do a downtown? I guess my concern I bring up is a question of that, working in the industry, $50,000 is not going to take it that far. For most people in the audience to realize that's not a lot of money for planning work that involves multiple properties in the entire town center.
I know you've addressed this already, but maybe just make it clear again. What is the $50,000?
Again, the $50,000. So the Economic Development Committee is going to utilize the $10,000 of the $50,000 to do conceptual drawings, I should say, conceptual drawings, much like we showed you in one of the earlier slides, of the downtown area. Again, working with the community through multiple committees to do this phased in, what are the things that the community wants in a downtown area. So kind of lay out all the amenities and the geography of that downtown area and what fits in each one of these parcels. The Economic Development Committee, they have already approached some design universities that may be able to assist us with that, so there's going to be more to come on that. I think that's part of the reason why it brings such in a small number, $10,000, because universities will help us with that. The $40,000 is focused solely on hiring an architecture firm to work with the Joint Feasibility Committee, so a different committee, to design the building of what a joint use library and senior center would look like. as Selectman Simons pointed out, how many floors should that be? What's the square footage should that be? What's the layout of the building? Again, we want to try to make that building as efficient as possible and share services, share staff. Again, that'll help with the long-term the long-term costs to operationalize this type of building. So that's kind of the vision for that $50,000. There is a little bit of urgency behind the conceptual design of the library senior center because we know in the next 12 months or so, 12 to 18 months, that we have debt that's going to come off. And the Division of Local Services always suggests when you have old debt coming off, you replace that with new debt, and typically you replace the new debt with infrastructure needs and infrastructure upgrades.
Okay, so with that being said, I think Selectman Simons has basically summarized it better. You're going to stop with the planning, essentially a blocking stack and space planning side and just a basic idea of what it could look like, not building plans. Right. Yeah. Sir.
Greg Lampusky, Hazeltine Road. This is just my personal opinion, but I think we might be running the risk of kind of losing the charm and character of the downtown Upton area. Just my personal opinion. I think that's what kind of draws a lot of people to the town, which has a classic New England feel, but just my personal opinion.
Thank you.
Mike Marchand, 21 Warren Street. Got a couple questions. One is, how much money have we spent on conceptual drawings or whatever you want to call it for anything to do with the library or senior center?
So far? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if anybody knows.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Roberts.
perhaps I can shed a little light on it.
Okay.
He's asking a long history.
I know.
Because
So try to make it a short answer.
we've been trying to do something with the library for 20 years.
You're right. Yep.
But basically, in the design of a library, we have received grants. And so the grants have paid for 2/3 of the cost of design of the library. Now, the last time we, I think the total cost was for the design was $66,000, of which 2/3 was paid for by the state of Massachusetts. So that is the last time. Now you can go back and probably, I think we've tried 4 times.
Sure.
You could probably take the portion that the town has paid and multiply it by 4.
Yep. So
Which
it's
would
about,
probably be
about 50 grand.
$120,000.
Could be that much. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
That answers that part.
Okay, Mr. Marshall, go ahead.
Second question is, the 50 grand is a drop in the bucket, like one of the previous speakers
Right.
has said. My concern is my taxes. That 3 Board of Selectmen ran each one of their cards on my wall and had to do with taxes. And all I see with this, somehow, some way, and I've heard rumblings through town, it's not going to be our money. I want to know the taxes, and I want to know where this fits in to where the rest of the major infrastructure needs we need in this town, where something like this fits in.
Okay.
So there's a few things we have to think about, and this all works together, right? There's capital planning, which looks across all the departments and major assets that we have to invest in. We have these designs, which are, a drop in the bucket relative to the amount of investment that you're going to be making. We have a tax rate that we have to manage. So all of this we need to do in concert. And with regards to these studies, again, it's a small amount of money for a very large investment. At the same time, we don't have to make the investment. So if people want to cut taxes, the way that we cut taxes is we get rid of firefighters, we get rid of policemen, we get rid of teachers, we get rid of DPW workers, or we get rid of people that work in the town hall. So that's one way to lower taxes. The other way to lower taxes is to not reinvest the debt that's rolling off the books. So we've got about $7 million of debt that's coming off the books over the next 2 to 4 years. And if we choose not to reinvest that money, that's a way that we can materially reduce taxes. So if folks in the town want to do either one of those things, either let go of staff from all of those departments and/or not reinvest the debt that we have into things like a DPW or into things like a library or a council on aging, then we certainly can lower taxes. So that's up to all of you, what your priorities are. That said, this specific development for the money that we're putting this $50,000, we're talking about potentially a mixed-use development, which we would not be raising money to do that because a private developer would be doing that. And the municipal building, we would be using debt that we would be rolling off. But again, it's up to the town, because that's going to have to come to the town meeting. People are going to have to vote on it, and if they don't want to spend the money on a new library because they want the taxes to be reduced, then that's their chance.
This is some thoughts on total of the monies where 10,000 was for conceptual design or drawings, right? And 40,000 was for the buildings. Have I got that right?
Well, not a building, but a architectural plans, correct?
For the buildings.
For the buildings, right.
Okay. So having that in my head, I'm thinking, is the part that's going for the buildings going to be engineering drawings or just architectural drawings? Because there's a difference. I'm thinking more of spending the money for the blueprints and the way the electricity is going to go in the walls and things like that than just what it's going to look like alone.
So engineering drawings that are known as schematic design, and we're not at that phase. These are conceptual drawings, architectural drawings.
Okay, so that would be more money spent on the engineering things later, right?
Typically, yeah, design
now back
is
to the
usually 10% of the cost of the building.
I'm sorry. Back to the conceptual 10,000. There was a point when we were going to buy the Holy Angels Church, and I was against it. And then I went to the Finance Committee hearing with the Board of Selectmen, saw Kelly's drawing as she came around. Was that a conceptual drawing? Okay, that was a conceptual drawing.
She said yes to that.
Back then, for that same geographic area, why are we spending another 10,000 for another conceptual design or drawing?
Anybody want to address that?
So, Sandy, when you have a minute, can you just show some of the images that we went through earlier?
Because it was that original one, the conceptual drawing, that made me change my mind and buy the church.
So we're bleeding into the other articles, but I'm more than happy to try to answer this. Can you go up to the map one more time? So, okay, right here. So I remember, Ms. Rice, you're referring to last year's quote-unquote secret meeting that was held at Town Hall, and we talked about this last November. And so what we're trying to, and these are some of the designs we showed, and these are just images that were created by the Central Mass Regional Planning Committee. Trying to knit together these 4 parcels, again, right now yielding $7,000 in taxes. I have the table to the right, which specifically labels each one of those parcels, so you see which parcels we're referring to. Next slide. Next slide. So these are just conceptual ideas that were generated by CMRPC just to try to give folks an idea of when we use the terminology mixed-use development, this is what we're referring to. We're not saying that this is what the building's going to look like, but we're just trying to say this is what a downtown redevelopment project could look like. Next slide. So what you see here...
Stop the chatter, please.
What you see here is the first floor is made up of retail space. So we've envisioned coffee shops and restaurants on the first floor space. The second floor is residential space, could be condominiums or apartments. What you don't see in the back, and if you understand the topography back here, it slopes back. There'd be a third level, kind of a walkout basement, if you will. That would be additional commercial space. So when we've had small conversations with developers, they would suggest a building that looks similar to this would be approximately 40,000 square feet on the 3 floors. And so these are the types of designs we're talking about when we talk about a mixed-use project. But that's just for those 4 parcels. The article we're referring to in the $50,000 article is blowing that up and it's looking across all parcels, everywhere all the way up from the VFW and all the way down, beyond the library building.
Why the VFW?
I'm just saying, that's the downtown area that we would look at as to what are opportunity parcels that we should be thinking about if we want to create this vibrant downtown.
I see, but the VFW isn't part of our forward thinking. No, okay.
No.
And then the other thing is, can you put up the picture of the conceptual drawing that you showed us in order to buy the Holy Angels Church?
Okay? These are the images I have today.
Okay, you don't have the older one.
Right, these are,
All right.
again, we work
So
with the regional
to answer
planning.
my question, or to ask my question again, why did we have to pay money for, have we paid for this yet?
No, the CMRPC provided these images for free.
Okay, so on the more then, why do we need a third one? We have the first one from Kelly, we have this one from C.D. Smith, and we want to spend $10,000 more on another one. I'm not
Okay, can you go up to the map? So those are just, that's one image for one parcel, or 4 parcels we call it. Well, what we're trying to do, which is like to the original backwards map. Right there. So this aerial view represents all of the downtown area. So in there, you would see that mixed-use project that I just showed you a picture of. You would see the siting of the joint municipal building. You would see other ideas that came out of public discussions, like I had mentioned earlier, maybe a river walk, maybe a trail to Heritage Park, other areas. So what we're trying to do here is create a 20-year vision of where we envision this downtown area to be in the next 20 years with a very phased-in sequence approach.
That's an aerial drawing of what exists now.
This is a 2010 aerial drawing.
Okay, not, okay.
All right. I know there's a few other people. I will give you a chance to talk, but we really spent a lot of time on this. We're plowing a lot of the same ground. So, Ms. Woe, if you could move us along, thank you.
Lori Woden, 7 Nelson Street. I just want to address, someone spoke about tax impacts we're going to have on the community. And I just want to say that we are really at a very complex time in our town. We're losing the fire station bond bill, and so by replacing the money that we're already spending, we can greatly improve services to the town by having an accessible library that everybody could use, and a senior center, and it wouldn't increase our tax burden at all, is my understanding. Is that correct?
That's fair to say. We haven't done the exact math, but we believe that based upon the debt that's coming off, we can replace that debt dollar for dollar with new infrastructure.
So that seems to me would be greatly improving the town, especially in a town when we seem to be approving an awful lot of over 55 housing. And I think that when we do that, we invite people who are older to move to this community, and we really don't even give them what people in practically every other community in Massachusetts has. So we do deserve, when we invite a lot of elder citizens there, that we want to give them a nice senior center. And of course, we haven't had a library that was even really adequate for all this time. So I think that's something to consider as well. And
Okay, thank you. Sir? Again, let's move it to new stuff.
I'll be quick.
Thank you.
The economic development here will be very successful. It's a great geographic center. Comes in from 3 towns. So don't worry about the money. There's developers, there's probably 5 or 6 guys here, or women, who can develop this property and make it successful for the town. The second point is, before you spend money on designs and graphs and maps, tell us what land is available. Show us this, is the building next to the library. Is that available? What a big chunk that is, just sitting there. But before anybody designs anything, you have to show exactly what land is available. And then this will be a successful project. Thank you.
Mr. Disjoint. Yes.
Move the question.
Move the question. We have a motion to move.
Second.
Sorry, but we'll see what happens. We'll see how the vote goes. Okay, so, motion is made to move the question. If you've heard enough, okay, you vote yes on this, and then we'll vote on what we're talking about. If you want to hear more, then you vote no. Okay, just want to let you know what the options are. So, all those in favor of moving the question signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries by 2/3 majority. So, what I want to do is this. I don't want any more discussion, but it's important that we explain exactly what we're voting on now, which is Article 25 of $50,000. $10,000 is for a certain thing, and $40,000 is for another thing, which we've talked about, dealing with the center of town, public library, senior center, and possibly other municipal services. That's what we're voting on, and capital budget gave a recommendation, and this requires a majority vote. Okay? So, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The motion carries by a majority. Article 26. This specifically deals with the library. Mr. Matani.
I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to sell or lease or transfer such land or building commonly known as the Racine Building or Public Library, located at 2 Main Street and showed as Assessor's Map 201-073 for such sum and upon such conditions determined by the Board of Selectmen pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30B, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to execute any and all instruments, including deeds, leases, or other agreements, and take all or other actions necessary or appropriate to effectuate the vote taken hereon.
Second? Second. Moved and seconded. FinCom recommendation?
Favorable action, Mr. Moderator.
Favorable action by the FinCom. Capital budget recommendation?
Favorable action.
Favorable action. Any discussion?
Sadie Van Buren, 113 Mendon Street. So, just a little confused because in some of the pictures here tonight saw that the mixed-use redeveloped area was just that corner of town, but not the part where the library is standing, right? That red circle around the parcels, and they were not around, the library and the parking lot were not circled. So if the library building is not part of the redeveloped area, why are we needing to sell it?
Good.
So this article just simply requests town meeting action to authorize the Board of Selectmen to sell these or transfer this property. So the intent behind 26 and 27 is to make parcels available that is right now slated for general municipal purposes. So you're absolutely correct. Right now, the conversations that we're having are focused on those 4 parcels, knitting them together. But in all cases, we'll have to go out through a request for proposals, which is a public procurement process, where we would seek developers to submit to us ideas of what they think they could do on behalf of the town. And so it's important to have all parcels available, so if proposals come forward, the Board of Selectmen can negotiate any type of project. So this just allows us, the library parcels, it just gives us more tools in our tool bag if something were to materialize.
Okay. Is there any requirement that parcel 73 and 71 would have to be sold to the same developer as the rest of them? Or could they be sold
No,
separately?
again, it goes through a public procurement process. Again, we would be working with the Economic Development Committee to help us draft what that RFP would look like. But no, the short answer is no. Those parcels would not have to be a part of the initial response from a developer. But it could be. So we want to be able to consider all opportunities.
So under that scenario, if they're considered separately, then it's the case that someone could buy 73 and 71 and redevelop that site well before a new library building is built on what is now, I think, parcel 58?
No, absolutely not. So we, when I say we, I'm speaking for the Board of Selectmen, have made a commitment that the library, the Nolan Racine building, that property cannot be transferred until the tenants are relocated. And that's why Article 25 is so important, so we can get to that point. Conceptual designs of that building so that we can construct a new library, construct a new senior center, to relocate those tenants, including the Historic Society, before we consider the disposition of the Knowlton Racine parcel.
Just want to point out that's not, we're not, it doesn't seem like we're able to vote on that, right? So it's not really clear that that's part of the restriction on that property.
Well,
it just seems like we're voting for it to be able to be sold.
I mean, yeah, that's the vote. I mean, certainly, we could entertain an amendment, but that the library trustees are more involved in the final disposition of the property.
How do we make that amendment?
Well, I suppose you could make an amendment saying that.
Mr. Moderator?
Oh, looks like Mr. Robertson might have an amendment there. So come on forward, Mr. If you guys don't mind Mr. Robertson cutting the line. Okay.
John Robertson, Chairman of the Board of Library Trustees. We have been talking to the town manager about this issue.
Yeah.
And working together, I hope we have a friendly amendment.
Go ahead.
And I will read this, and it goes as follows. I move that the pending motion be amended by adding the following words after Assessors Map 201-073. Upon the condition that a new library building recommended by the Board of Library Trustees is constructed, comma, and
There, and then that's it. Then it goes for such some blah, 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 after that. Right?
Can you repeat that?
Second.
Okay, there's a second, but let me read it. And you tell me if it's what it should be. The amendment is to add language saying that, okay, after, and if you have a copy of the article in front of you where it says map 201-073, add the following language. Upon the condition that a new library building recommended by the Board of Library Trustees is constructed. And then after that it would be for such sum and upon such conditions, et cetera, determined by the Board of Selectmen. Okay? That's, so, that is the amendment that's being recommended. It has been seconded. So my understanding is that adding this amendment in here says that the town can't sell the library until they have another one built. Is that right?
Just want to look at the motion.
Sure. Town council, take a peek at that. Is okay. Okay, town council looks okay from a town council point of view. Any concerns? Sure. Oh. Oh, okay. Well, so for example, Mr. Robinson, it says that something new has to be constructed. What if it was moved somewhere else?
That the Board of Library
If it was
Trustees fine with.
relocated, would that be okay?
Because this just says.
Well, that would be okay as long as there's a place to put the library.
So say construction or relocation approved by the Board of Library.
Okay, so, let me ask you, Mr. Robertson, would you be okay if it said, is constructed or relocated? Would that be okay?
Yes.
Because then we're not talking about necessarily a brand-new building, but it's that you've been moved somewhere else and you're up and working.
Whether it is, in the end, the feasibility, joint feasibility committee is looking into it. Whatever their recommendation is, then that is what I believe we'd be willing to do. And that would include renovation of the Route Knowlton Ristine building, building the building on the new area in the revitalization of the town.
Yeah.
Or if by some chance they found a wonderful location to build a library, I believe the library trustees would happily go along with it.
Okay. So we're just trying to get the language down there. So is it okay with you if we change the word from constructed to constructed or relocated? Is that okay with the trustees or not?
Well, they gotta have a
Some direction here, because we gotta get moving on this.
It's all right. It's all right by, I think, the library trustees. I believe the town manager liked the word construction. So if he is willing to go along with it, fine.
The board would prefer constructed or relocated.
Right, so
It's open-ended.
So just adding the or relocated to the language.
Fine.
Okay,
But-
we'll add that. Thank you. Boy. Okay. Alrighty. So that's fine. We're not going to have to go through an amendment to an amendment. So, okay, folks, it's been moved and seconded to add this language to the wording so that you have another library somewhere before you sell the old library. That's what we're talking about. Any discussion on that or not? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no? Motion carries by a majority. So, we've got the Article 26 as amended. Any more discussion? Yes.
Ellen Arnold, 54 Ridge Road. Article 26, and I know we're not there yet, but Article 27, I have the same comment. It seems as if we're putting the cart before the horse, because if we give the selectmen, who may not be the same board when this proposal might come up, to sell to a private developer who has other plans that might not fit with this concept study we're paying for that hasn't been completed, you know, we could end up with a blank lot someplace with something going up that isn't something the town wants that's been developed through a concept plan.
Okay, so,
You want to take that?
Sure. I think one thing that's important that probably hasn't really been talked about all that much is these are all steps in the process. It actually has been brought up. It is steps in the process. But we cannot arbitrarily build anything. That's the reason for these articles. So, and as a previous speaker mentioned about tax rate, all of these expenditures affect your taxes. So at some point in time in the future, you will be asked next, most likely, about either land or engineering. Both of those are going to cost money. Cubic dollars, not that kind of money. You know, not 50,000, it's going to be significantly more, typically 10% of a project's cost. So, again, this is the first, well, a step in the process. That doesn't, you may not like this step, but you really may not like other ideas that may come up. And that's where everybody's opinion is valued. There's really not a wrong one. You may, you know, as previous speaker said, you may like your money more than you're going to like another building. And that is your choice. It's not right, it's not wrong. It's what you feel you can afford or what you feel is important to you. So that's one thing I think that people need to be comfortable with. Again, if you don't like the article, you know, by all means, express your concerns and people will vote accordingly.
I don't think that exactly addresses my point, that we could end up with a vacant lot before we have a concept plan developed, and there are some of us who might feel that, you know, we moved here for what it is, and I know that I can go downtown on, say, a Sunday afternoon when the municipal building is closed, and it's a lovely, quiet little town, with very little traffic. I don't think that has anything to do with the power we're giving you right now. And so I would suggest even passing over these two articles. I'm not prepared to make that motion, but I'd like to consider it. Why do we have to do this now? Why don't we do the concept plan, then give you the authority to do what the concept plan suggests?
I personally do not have any problem if you folks would like to pass over this, but I would just answer that, if I didn't answer it correctly last time, I just want to make sure that I do. You had mentioned about parcel of land and ending up with a vacant lot. If parcel was to be purchased, that would be purchased at town meeting. And of course, we would not just be purchasing a parcel of land. Are you referring to us selling this building and being knocked over?
Yes, I'm referring to the Knowlton Racine building, or Holy Angels, being sold to a developer who wants to put up whatever, a high-rise condos, whatever, before your concept plan is developed on what the townspeople have input on as to what they actually want. I feel this is putting the cart before the horse. Why don't we wait till the concept plan is digested by the town and approved before you decide that you want authority to sell these buildings?
I mean, we have a motion on the floor.
Does-
I would make a motion, we pull the article.
Well, at this point, if you didn't want to move it, the motion would be to a table at this point. That would be the best motion to make if that's what you want to do.
Okay, I would make a motion to table Article 26.
Okay, is there a second?
And 27.
Okay, now, there's no further discussion. It requires a two-thirds majority vote. That's the way at this point to sort of pass over it, because it's already a motion. So at this point, it's too late to pass over it. But the best way to kill it, if that's what you want to do and if everyone else wants to do that, is to table it.
Can you amend an amendment? To add Article 27?
We can't, we haven't got there yet. Well, you know what? Chances are 27 might get passed over. It's possible. So, this is what's been happening for the past 30 seconds. A motion's been made to table 26. If you don't want to give the Board of Selectmen the authority to sell the Racine building yet, you want to vote yes on this. If you don't want to do that, then you vote no. We keep talking about it. That's what we're doing right now, okay? Everyone understand that? All right.
I'd like to second the motion before you take it to a vote.
I think second. That's all right. And because it's a two-thirds vote, we can't have any discussion on tabling something. Okay, so all those in favor of tabling Article 26 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The motion passes by a two-thirds majority vote. Article 27. Article 27. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to withdraw.
Then to pass.
To pass over table.
Second. Moved and seconded to pass over Article 27. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The motion carries by a majority, which is all that requires for that. Okay, 28. Oh, I forgot that capital budget, but that was okay anyway. 28.
Ready, Mr.
Yes, go ahead.
I move that the town will vote to transfer from the water enterprise fund returning earnings a sum of $101,750 from the wastewater enterprise fund, a sum of $118,250 for a total sum of $220,000 for a Department of Public Works and wastewater comprehensive assessment and analysis, including all expenses, including incidentals.
Second? Moved and seconded to transfer from two different funds, Water Enterprise 101,750. I'm sorry, what? Okay, so we need to add the language from the Water Enterprise Fund retained earnings, a sum of $101,750, and from the Wastewater Enterprise Fund retained earnings, a number $118,250, the total of which is $220,000, which is what's in your article. That's been seconded. FinCom recommendation?
Favorable action, Mr. Moderator.
Favorable action by the FinCom. Okay, anybody have questions, or discussion? Capital budget, thank you.
Favorable action.
Favorable action by the capital budget. Okay. Not that I'm encouraging discussion, it's $220,000, folks, okay? Do you know what you're voting on? Okay. If there's no discussion, this is just a simple majority vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. Motion carries by a majority. So, everybody, please stay in your seats. We have a few things to say before we dissolve the warrant. Mr. Robertson.
I'd like just to take a minute or so to remember Bill Young. For years, Bill Young was a fixture here, and at the end of each meeting, he would make a motion to adjourn the meeting. As you know, or many of you know, Bill passed on. Now, I've been holding this position for the last few years, hoping Bill would come back. But we now know that Bill will not be able to. And then talking to Bill a short time ago, I asked him where he got the wording, dissolve the warrant. And Bill said to me, I can't remember, John, but it sounds good, doesn't it? And I said, yeah, Bill, it does sound good. And with that, I move that we dissolve the warrant and adjourn the meeting.
Moved and seconded to dissolve the warrant and adjourn the meeting, but before we vote on that, let's just...
Just moderate.
Yes.
There's a question.
There's a question on the floor.
So we'd like to have a motion to reconsider Article 27, because that's unrelated to the library, and it has to do with the church, which is something that people have a lot of questions about. If you don't want to talk about it, then vote nay.
Seconded to dissolve the meeting.
Oh yeah, hold on. Okay. Just give me a second. Hey, folks, it's already 10:18. So just give me a minute, okay? So my question for the board is this. Okay, my question for the board is this. The reason to reconsider it, is it that much significantly different than the other one that we really need to deal with it tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
And I can explain why, if I should do that now or whenever the time's appropriate.
Okay. So, this is what we need to have happen. To do this, somebody who voted to pass over needs to make a motion to reconsider this. So all of you who voted no,
I just did.
Did you vote yes or no on this?
To pass over it?
Yeah. Did you vote yes to pass over it?
No.
Then you can't make the motion. Okay? Somebody who voted in favor of passing over this needs to make the motion to reconsider. Okay?
Mr. Moderator, can I
Yes.
make a motion to reconsider?
Did you vote in favor of reconsider? Did you vote in favor of passing over?
Yes, I made the motion.
Very good. And you voted that way. Excellent. Then. Okay, so we need a second to that. Been moved and seconded to reconsider Article 27. Mr. Robinson, we'll get back to this motion here, because this is of a higher priority. Sorry about that. But, okay. So, is a motion to reconsider 27, okay, because it is different than 26. So, Mr. Simus, you've got the floor, sir.
So the reason we wanted to reconsider this is that, as you all are familiar, we have that 3 Milford Street church property, which we made a motion in, or made a decision a year or so ago to purchase that property. The building is in disrepair. At this point, it's part of a process where we're trying to redevelop that parcel, working with a developer or developers to put together a project for that area. So that's where the parking lot is. This article is about where the parking lot is, the town parking, as well as 3 Milford Street, and giving us the ability to negotiate with contractors to be able to put together a plan for that area. So those negotiations are ongoing. If we don't have the ability to dispose of these properties as part of those negotiations, we're not in a position to negotiate that, and our ability to dispose of 3 Milford Street, the church, essentially goes away because we can't do anything with it without having the authority from the town meeting to do that. So if you think we should hold on to 3 Milford Street and just look at it, then that's fine. Certainly we can do that, but otherwise, we need this parcel in order to be able to negotiate with contractors and engineers and developers to redevelop that area. And the reason it's different from the library is this is something that's happening now because we actually own 3 Milford Street. And, you know, I put my arm through a hole in the side of it, so it's a property that is, it's not being maintained, it's not in good shape, and at some point it's going to become an even greater liability for the town.
Okay, any other discussion on reconsidering it?
So I have a question.
Please,
Don Spargo with the Historical Commission. So usually it would come before us because it's 1848, I looked it up, for if you wanted to vote for a demo delay. So I don't know if the town owns it, that means it wouldn't go in front of us or not. It's different than usual.
Could you just go back there? What's up with that last one? So, great question, Don. No? What was the one that had committees on there? Right there. So, I heard someone talk earlier about if this board goes away and, you know, we sell a piece of property and we have a new developer and we're looking at a vacant parcel after we sold it. That can't happen. And the reason why that can't happen is because we have to go through a request for proposals, a public process in which we will design the specifications on what we want to be on those 4 parcels knitted together. It's specifically the 2 parcels we're referring to in Article 27, as the selectman pointed out, is 3 Milford Street, the church, and then the municipal parcel as well. Knitting those 2 together with the Thompson properties will create that mixed-use development I keep referring to. And to your question, Don, the way we're envisioning this happen is you see those committees up there, to engage those committees to ensure that we have the most appropriate RFP that goes out for public bidding, right? So we're getting the input from the committees, we're getting the input from the community before we go to RFP. Once we go to RFP, any developer who bids on that property, they must adhere to those specifications that we outlined. And if they don't adhere to them, we take the property back. So, to your point, Don, we certainly be working with the Historical Commission to determine whether or not this is a building that should pass the demolition delay bylaw.
Pardon me, I just had a question about the reconsideration. We don't do this very often, so that's all that conversation was about. Go ahead, Ms. Howard.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is appropriate at this time because I know we're voting on to reconsider, but what you said that you want to dispose of it for is to facilitate the development of the downtown area into a mixed-use area, including condominiums, retail, and commercial space. It doesn't say because you want to tear it down. It seems to me we're still putting the cart before the horse. If you really feel that what you want to do is tear it down because it's unsafe, why didn't this article say that? And, you know, can't we wait until we have this plan that you're talking about? I'm assuming we're talking, what, 6 months before we have this conceptual plan?
Right, so we have a plan, we have opportunities in front of us today to go ahead and move forward with this phase of the project, right? And so we talked about this for a year now. And so in order to negotiate with the developer, the Board of Selectmen, they need to have the rights in order to do that. So the RFP, we wouldn't want it to read that the sale of this property is contingent upon town meeting action, because no developer is going to respond to that RFP knowing they have to wait 6 to 12 months to hopefully town meeting takes action on the sale of that property. This is giving the authority to our executive branch, these 3 gentlemen here, our executive branch, you are the legislative branch, giving them that authority to go ahead, issue the RFP, and then negotiate the sale or transfer of those parcels.
I would say that, there have been developers, perhaps not exact situation, but developers are willing to wait to go through the Chapter 61 process, which can be far more cumbersome. So I just don't understand. If you want to tear the building down and leave an empty lot until the town, you say, we have discussed this for a year. I don't remember a public forum in the last year that took community involvement. Perhaps you've had it at selectmen's meetings for those people who might have been sitting there, or for other boards, that a few people might have been sitting there. There's been no public forum. If you want to tear it down, say that's what you want to do. Don't say that you want to make it into a mixed-use area and tear it down and sell it to somebody who's going to do that before we have our conceptual plan. That's what I'm saying.
Doherty?
We have no intentions of personally tearing it down, but if we sold it or disposed of it to another contractor, they would be able to tear it down, if that's what you are alluding to.
And it's my concern what the other contractor would have in mind.
We'll go back to the pictures that you saw earlier.
We wouldn't continue with an RFP that would allow them to knock it down and not build a development that they talked about. So the part of the agreement of us selling or disposing of this property and the church, and whether or not it has to be knocked down or whatever they would do with it, would be contingent on the design of a mixed-use development. So they wouldn't be able to say they're going to do something, purchase the church, knock it down, and then leave. That wouldn't be the arrangement. But you still have concerns. So
But the potential, yeah, I do. The potential is that they could knock it down before you have a conceptual plan in place that the community's had input. This horrifies me, by the way. I come to that corner every day and I look at, not every day, excuse me, but every time I come to that corner, I look at that window. I don't see that window there. I don't see anything that says Upton to me there. So I don't want you to have the power to sell it to a developer to do a project like this before the town has said, do they or don't they want it? That's my concern.
Keep in mind that this isn't the library, so that's why you don't see a window. Okay? So, and second of all, in order to develop, going back 4 years ago, we invested $7 million in the town hall. And I think most people will agree that was a good investment, and we have a great town hall. In order to make downtown even better, we need to invest in what's across the street. We currently have a church that has been empty since 2011. It's been empty for 7 years. We've gotten no bites at the apple. In order to develop that neighborhood across the street where we're not looking at an empty church, the selectmen need the ability and the authorization to negotiate. And that's what this article is looking to do.
And that's what concerns me, because I do remember the town hall process quite well. I voted for it, I was in favor of it, and I remember how many public forums there were about it. And as you know, you did a very good job being the chairman of that committee. However, I am saying that there has been no public input. You could tear down that building and give permission to a developer to build something that people might not be happy with or like before your conceptual plan is in place and
Mr. Moderator,
discussed by the town. That's what I'm saying.
You can't just, you have to get in line. Okay?
I think it would do some good to talk about the process of this rather than what we keep on focusing on is the language of the motion without really understanding what it means and what it's about and how it fits into the process. All of these things are going to require an RFP. The RFP will be carefully constructed. The RFP will be public. There will be public input into the RFP. The plans from the RFP will be presented to the public. The public will give feedback to the selectmen as to which of the respondents most closely, adheres to what the RFP asks for. In addition, the only way the selectmen can encourage high-quality developers to come forward and spend significant design funds, not town funds, on the design, is if we encourage them to do that. And the only way to encourage a developer to spend $50, $100, $250,000 at a minimum on a vision for a $40 million or $20 million building is to know that they have a credible person across the table from them that they can talk with. We're not saying we're taking this out of the public process. In fact, it's public every step of the way. What we are doing is trying to give the selectmen the ability to be credible. When we're acting like this, we're not credible. We're not a credible partner for anyone to have any substantive discussion with. We will get no ideas presented to us that offer us any kind of vision that aren't on our dime. This process allows somebody to come in with confidence and say, we're putting our best design forward with the hope that the selectmen can present this to the town and that will be accepted. It's not saying that this is automatically sold, automatically torn down. The RFP can say you have to maintain the church where it is and repair it and incorporate it into your design. You can say we want the library in a certain area, you need to incorporate that into your design. All of the elements that you're objecting to can be combined into the RFP. But without the selectmen having the ability and the authority to negotiate in good faith, this is a foregone conclusion. We will get nowhere with any developer.
I understand the process. I've got some experience doing it, granted for the federal government, but the issue is, number 25, we authorized the expenditure of $10,000 of the 50, 20% of a figure to pay for a concept for the downtown. I inferred from comments made from the table that you've already sort of looked at and had some at least preliminary informal emails, chit-chats, whatever you want to call them, with potential developers on what could happen stitching these parcels together. So why did we just spend $10,000 for a concept design before? I mean, I understand the gentleman's point, he's right, but again, let's get the concept for downtown straight. We just gave you $10,000 for that, and then look at whatever, because words matter. They have meaning. And that passage of that, if this article is brought back up and passes, you could, regardless of what anyone in this room says, you could potentially sell that parcel of land with that building for any purpose without regard to every other piece of what you've laid out, which makes sense. But you're not legally bound to concepts. That article says specifically you could sell that property today. I could walk into the town hall with a check for $5 million, and I bet you'd all be thinking, hey, that's probably pretty good. So, and I have other questions. If this motion to reconsider comes to be, I'll ask specific questions about that property. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a couple points. One is the building has not been totally unoccupied for 7 years, as we housed our town hall staff there during the interim reconstruction of town hall. And somehow it was safe enough for everybody to be there for almost a year. So, and also we're replacing a roof on a 30-year-old fire station, but yet this building has lasted 250 years in the center of town. I didn't move to Upton to look at that picture that was been played all night, when they can incorporate a 250-year-old building, and to say that it's not solid, when it's obviously doing better than our 30-year-old police station renovation and our 30-year-old fire station renovation.
Sir.
Mr. Moderator, as I understand the question is whether we should reconsider.
Correct.
Article 37 under the question.
Okay, so, boy, it's going to be a few votes here. So, moving the question, you all know, two-thirds of you want to stop talking about it, then we'll stop talking about it. So, if you're done talking about it, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? Okay, so we're done talking about it. Now, question is reconsideration. All this means, if you vote yes for this, it means you want to reconsider this. Doesn't mean you want to vote in favor of 27. It means you want to go back so that we can then make a motion about 27. Okay? If you don't want to do that, then you vote no. That's what this vote means. Okay? Any questions on that? All right. So, all those in favor of, sorry. folks at home are wondering how I'm doing, so that's what it's all about. So, all of you who are in favor of reconsidering Article 27, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The motion is lost. We are not going to reconsider Article 27. So, okay. Mr. Robertson, a few minutes ago, you talked about Mr. Young, okay, who was a long-standing, significant individual in the town of Upton. If everybody could please be patient, because I'm going to ask that we just have, just for those of you who knew who Bill Young was, he didn't just come here. He was working with the school, all sorts of different groups in town. So if we could just have a moment to be quiet and reflect and think about Bill Young, and then I'll entertain your motion to adjourn. Okay, Mr. Robertson?
I move that we dissolve the warrant and adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, folks.